All right, it's 8:32, and I'm going to call to order the Grant County Budget Advisory Board for October 23rd. And present, we have Chris Baird, the chair, Mallory Nassau, Aubrey Davis, Chris Kaufman, Jalen Hawks, Quinn Hall, Renee Baker, Zach Wachesik, and Annalie O'Donnell. So first off is the approval of the minutes from the 16th, October 16th. Does anybody have any discussion or a motion to approve? Jalen, are you trying to talk? I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was just counting how many board members we had to see if I could recuse myself because I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but looks like we got plenty.
You probably could. We have 5, I think, don't we? Quinn,
I think so.
Chris, Zach, Jalen, so.
I read them.
I have full confidence in them. I just, haven't read them yet. I read them more for information to remember what happened.
I'll make a motion. So moved.
All right.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections on the minutes for October 16th? Okay, seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
Sure, I'll abstain.
Jalen Hawks abstains, so the motion passes 4-0-1. All right, so let's see. So the first thing on our agenda is the county attorney's office. However, she was unable to present today, and so I'm going to postpone that one until October 30th. And so the first one up then after that is the Children's Justice Center. And Aubrey Davis is with us. I'm going to share her budget that she sent in. So this is a little different than most other county departments because Aubrey is predominantly grant funded, or all grant funded. And so Aubrey, maybe you just want to kind of walk us through, well, first off, kind of explain where your funding comes from.
Okay.
If you could.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
So the funding for the Children's Justice Center comes almost exclusively from the state legislature. So within the legislative process that each year the legislature allocates a certain amount of funding to the state Children's Justice Program. And then the state Children's Justice Program under the Attorney General's office basically delegates a portion of each of that funding or each part of that funding for each center in the state. And so the algorithm that is based on is almost exclusively based on the number of interviews that are conducted between the facility in Grand County and the facility in San Juan County. So in theory, if we have, a significant number of interviews, forensic interviews, then we stand to have a higher budget. And if we have a fewer number of interviews, then we have a lower budget. So the way that the grant works is that it's on a reimbursement basis through Grand County, which basically means that every quarter I submit a reimbursement request to the state, and then it's a check to Grand County, and that covers our expenses. So all of our, basically all of our personnel, all of our accounts payable comes through Grand County, but it's basically like a pass through. So at this point, looking at this budget, there's no direct financial implication to Grand County other than it's not really services in kind, but just the services um, that the county provides in terms of accounts payable and accounts receivable, all of that. So likewise, because the state runs on a fiscal year, the Children's Justice Center runs on a fiscal year. So whereas other departments are presenting their budget coming up for the 2020-2021 budget, we're actually already 1 quarter into, well, we're in the 2nd quarter now of our fiscal year. So I actually present my budget to the state office in July. So what you're seeing, does that help? Does that explain that, Chris?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
So yeah, we don't really worry about the change in the fiscal or the difference between fiscal and calendar years for you. I mean, your budget doesn't change that much between one year and the next usually, and we could always amend it, and we do amend it at least with the state, and so I don't think it's a big deal to just kind of budget your fiscal year into our calendar year.
Yeah.
Really fine.
So this year, if you refer to column E, the actual total at the bottom of column E represents the total amount of funding that we receive or will receive for the fiscal year 2020 and through 2021. So the amount that was allocated under the state contract, you'll see, is $96,639. This is a big change from last year. So we're actually short. We're not short, but the amount, the difference between what we received from the state last year versus what we receive in this fiscal year is a difference of about $12,630. Last year, our state contract was around $109,950. So some of that loss is based on the number of interviews conducted at both the Grand and San Juan County CJCs. But it does also have a percentage of that is also based on obviously the pandemic and changes in the amount that the legislature granted to the state CJC program. So another major difference is that in previous years, we've always been able to roll over the money that we don't spend. So typically what you see here is, based on previous year's expenses, but it's also generally that we've run a fairly frugal program and have always been able to roll over roughly around anywhere between $6,000 to $11,000 each year. And that gives us a little bit of a cushion going forward. And this year, the legislature did not allow us to keep our rollover funding. And it's likely that we won't be able to keep that going forward, at least until we'll find out during the next legislative session if that's even possible.
Okay. So yeah, this is all expense reimbursed, right, Aubrey? So the expense incurred, Grand County kind of puts it up, and then we seek reimbursement, and it comes back, exactly the same.
In column M, you'll see that there is a $3,000. There's $3,000 and $10,000 that are from other sources, and that $3,000 is a rough estimate of the individual donations that we'll receive. It's it's always difficult to plan for what people may or may not contribute, especially in this kind of economy. And the $10,000 for computer equipment software is contingent on the application of a grant application to the National Children's Alliance. So if we don't receive that funding, we won't spend that $10,000. But everything else is pretty status quo from previous years.
Okay. So yeah, in this case, since it's 100% expense reimbursed for the most part, you know, all of these line items that show as expense are also, you know, the exact same reciprocal revenue.
Mhm.
So I
Um,
have a question.
ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just curious what benefits are figured in for the Vista at 14,500.
The VISTA benefits are covered by the VISTA grant through CNCS, Community for National. I just spaced out what that stands for. So we put it under federal other, under the advisement of the state program director, but we don't pay that. So there's no outlying expense for that. The only outlay that we pay for the Vista is under column D, row 11.
Okay.
We pay $4,000 to, so Greene County is unique in that we actually have a county-wide Vista program. So there are a number of organizations that buy into that program. So last year, our buy-in was $3,500. This year, I was advised it might go up. So we budgeted that $4,000, but the $14,500 is the estimated amount of the Vista's yearly benefits. And
Oh,
that's
so is
how
that like the scholarship they get after they leave? Or I've had a Vista before in a previous life, and we budgeted for travel and stuff. So I'm just curious what that will actually cover. What benefits do they provide?
that's their health and their health
Oh,
insurance, health coverage.
great, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then everything else, like we cover the Vista's travel as well. However, we're basically not traveling this year. But all of that is just covered within other expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we kind of dealt with this a little bit last year, Aubrey, but for the purposes of me translating this into the county budget system, I really only need to know the real, you know, expenses and revenue. So even though, you know, this, be advised that this shows up on your budget for some reason, if that's not money that's going to be spent or come in, it doesn't really need to be a component of the county's budget.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Only money that actually, you know, changes hands, comes in and goes out, needs to be a part of the county budget. And so, and you know, your budget, this is the one that you submitted to the state. It can be, you know, slightly different from the county's budget, taking into account some of these things.
Yeah.
But you know, really all we need to know is the you know, the constraints on spending, so that we, you know, can make sure that we're not bypassing the maximum amount, you know, that we would be able to seek reimbursement for. And
that would be the $96,639.
Well, hypothetically plus 3,000 in actual donations, right?
Yeah.
But that, and then also the 10 if you get the grant.
Yes.
For the whatever it was.
And it's possible that it's entirely possible that we won't get that this year. So
yeah. So I mean, the thing with budgeting is, you know, it's fine to come in under budget. It's not fine to come in over budget. So it's pretty common for across the county to budget as if we were going to get a grant, and then if we don't, well, then we just don't.
Yeah.
and doesn't. But, you know, the way that the laws are established, if you want to increase your budget, you have to go through a much more extensive process than if you have to decrease your budget.
Yeah.
If
And
you didn't budget
I-
that, brought it in, then you wouldn't, you know, technically have the budget to spend it, because you never budgeted to bring it in or spend it.
Exactly. Yeah. And this, like you said, this is the budget that I present to the state. And so, for the purposes of this conversation, we can take that off if totally need be. My goal is to always come in under budget. And this year, like you'll note, under in-state travel, we budgeted $5,000. That typically incorporates travel to Salt Lake for directors' meetings and travel for the Children's Justice Center Symposium, all of which is by and large going to be conducted online. So
Yeah.
that,
Well, one thing
that
I
mileage,
think
yeah.
about is, I mean, one thing to think about if the rollover is gone, is that trying to come in under budget may not be to anybody's advantage, you know?
This is true.
If you can't roll any money over, then it's just gonna disappear. So,
Yeah.
if
And we
it, you
did-
know, so, and I think, you know, I talk about this often with other grant-funded positions like weed department and et cetera, and, you know, we don't get the revenue unless you make the expenditure. And so, you know, there's not necessarily any benefit to coming in under budget when you're expense reimbursed grant funded.
Yeah. A lot of what we were actually, we came in significantly under budget last year, with the extent that we had the rollover to spend. So we were able to use that money to buy new furniture for the CJC in San Juan County. And so we now have, we didn't need it as much in Greene County, but we did replace a couple pieces of furniture in Greene County so that all of our furniture is leather. It can be easily cleaned. It allows for just one more element of, you know, ensuring that we have, you know, a facility that's clean and safe for people to come into. So I can always find ways to spend money.
Yeah, well, just saying, you know, because in the past, if you could roll money over, then that's fine to come in under budget. But if you have work to do that you'd like to do, or any kind of things like that, and your budget's just going to disappear at the end of the fiscal year,
Yeah.
you know.
And
Anyway.
we're also, yeah.
That's the mark of a good ED, be able to spend that money, don't lose it.
Yeah.
Don't give it back.
I definitely know how to spend money. I can make that happen.
Legally, of course. All right, so, anybody have any questions for the Children's Justice Center budget? It's kind of hanging out there by itself in a lot of ways, just kind of separated from the rest of the county. But Aubrey does a great job and very valuable position. Anybody have any comments or questions before we move on?
So Aubrey and Chris, that 10,000, that is in the $96,000 total, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, 96 plus the whatever individual contributions come in, which
Now, the
will equal.
total is 133.
But that also includes the $10,000 for that grant. So
Yeah.
if you look at column D, line 48 or 49, I'm sorry, that shows that $10,000.
I know, that's what Quinn was asking, though, whether or not the 96 included the 10, and it doesn't.
Oh, no, it does not. So if you, under column E on line 49, that $10,000 doesn't show. And then the total at the bottom of column E is the 96,639.
And that's for ongoing state contract funding.
Yes.
And so, there are some other sources here, though, that factor in.
Yeah, so that's my question is, do we need to include those other sources in the total budget amount if we're going to plan on spending it, even if we're not going to get it?
Well, everything probably except for this 14.5, I would say.
Yes.
And so, but some of it may or may not be spent, depends on whether we get the grant or the donations.
Yes.
And so also, I guess this in-kind, is this some kind of estimate of our in-kind contribution to you?
Yes, and the city. The city, so the city
Do you
maintains
any-
the,
Or is it just, yeah, so that's another element right there, I guess we should, it's not real money being exchanged, and so, you know, that doesn't get put into the county's budget. And I understand why you put it in, because it makes a difference when you're working with grants to have in-kind numbers and, you know, other sort of in-kind, non-monetary contributions show up on your, but for the purposes of budgeting for Grand County, you know, the only thing we have to budget for is actual money that changes hands.
yes,
You spend it and then it comes back in. That's the only thing that we need to budget for
yes,
in Grand County. And so we can kind of translate this fairly easily. We'll just
So
have to
you'd
kind of
have-
identify which things are expected to be turned into actual transactions and reimbursement versus which are not. So this 14.5 and probably this 2,200 would be not included in the county's budget.
correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody else before we move on? I think Justice Court's up next. Oh, no, Family Support Center. I'll try to breeze through that one too. It's another kind of semi-complicated one. So thank you, Aubrey. I think that's all for you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Aubrey.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So now I need to stop sharing this and programs. Give me just a minute. I think Sherry Lynn, the director, is out sick, perhaps, or she's not available, I know that. So I did a quick sketch up on her budget last night. Nothing has really changed about the grant scenario from last year for the Family Support Center. So Family Support Center has its own fund. It's Fund 46. Start off reviewing the revenue. There's two main sources of revenue, and they are here. So we've got a TANF grant, which is, oh, now I'm going to forget the acronym. Jalen, do you remember what TANF stands for? It's something, I can't remember. It's a family's.
I think it's
disadvantaged.
temporary assistance for needy families.
There you
Something
go.
along those lines. Sorry.
Yeah. So, you know, a big part of our problem is that our, starting in 2019, our TANF grant was cut in half, essentially. And so, this is kind of, I think it kind of gets approved on a year-by-year basis now also. And so we're kind of hypothesizing, I guess. I think it was renewed at virtually the same level. It used to be about double that. It used to be closer to the same virtually as this other grant, which is the grant from Workforce Services, Department of Human Services in the state. And so this one stayed the same. and covers, you know, the way the grant's written, it covers roughly 50% of the Family Support Center's salary and expenses. And it used to be that the TANF grant used to cover the other 50%, and it was a pretty easy thing to figure out. You would just, you know, run off the Family Support Center's expenses and split them 50-50 and send it out for reimbursement, and it was pretty easy. And it's kind of the way it still works for this Human Services or Workforce Services grant, but the TANF grant is not really based on some strict percentage, 50%. There's a multitude of percentages and then a lot of complications to it, you know, and so it really doesn't cover 50% anymore. And so there's a pretty big gap, at least 25 to 30% gap in expenses and revenue, which has been for the last year at least. You know, it used to be, for instance, that we needed to subsidize the Family Support Center with general fund money. You know, let me look back in history here and see. So we started in 2018, you know, happened to send some money. It looks like so about $12,693. And then in 2019, because half of 2019 we lost that half of the other half of the TANF grant, it bounced up to $31,000 that needed to be transferred to balance their budget at the end of the year. And so, and now it's, you know, with dealing with the full year of the TANF grant being only 50% of what it used to be, now we're up to $66,000 in subsidy, or maybe even more. So, I mean, it's an issue that hasn't been resolved yet, and I think Mallory is also working on some potential resolutions with, I think, the Family Support Center Association. Is that what it's called, or?
Yes, so on the TANF side, that pot of money is actually, this year, it sounds like it passed through the Association for Utah Family Support Centers. My understanding is that maybe isn't how it's always been, so some changes with that piece. Yeah, and we're hoping to have some conversations next week and keep moving along with some different options for supporting the Family Support Center.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's also, you know, generally some donations, and it's hard to say exactly how much there will be. Saw quite a few donations in 2019, over 8,000. 2020 year to date, we're at 2,167. All this COVID stuff has really kind of thrown that whole operation into chaos, as it has with a lot of child care type facilities all across the county. So it's been a rough road this year for sure at this place, and rougher considering that we're not fully funded and requires county subsidization. So that's something that we're in the process of trying to resolve. And then, you know, as we move into the expense side, it's kind of difficult for me to, I mean, the budget that was established in 2020 was the budget that was put into the grant.
Hey, Chris.
And, go ahead.
Sorry, before you move on, and I'm not trying to find things for the commission office staff to do, but I'm wondering if Tara might have a few minutes to make a few calls to counties. I'm just curious about, I mean, a lot of the family support centers are nonprofits. There's only, I think, 2, right, Mallory, in the state that are still entirely county facilities?
Yes, that's correct.
So I would be curious that even among those that are run by a nonprofit, how much the county contributes, because I would think we'd probably still want to make a small contribution. So I'm just curious about that. No hurry, but going forward, that might be good information to have, if there is time in the for Tara.
Oh yeah, and Mallory. I mean, everything's kind of crazy, but Mallory has been trying to work on it. We had to cancel a meeting yesterday about it and reschedule. And so we probably would have known more had we been able to hold that meeting yesterday. But there are some folks who are interested in helping us and potentially, making some big changes. And quite honestly, some big changes need to be made to make it whole. And so, anyway, yeah, I think Mallory's been doing a lot of research, and so she can certainly look into that also.
Yes, I can definitely do that.
So
Thanks.
let's see. Moving on to the expense side, the budget that I plugged in for 2020 is more or less somewhat, relatable to the. So there's two components. There's the 4110 department and the 4111 department, and I try to segregate them to the greatest degree I can, although it's not entirely possible the way things are set up to have most of the DHS budget on this 4110 department, and then most of the TANF budget on this 4111. And the way the accounting software works is that as you can see, we've set up in 2019 some new salary line items in the TANF budget so that we could start, because part of the way the grant reads is we need to split up hours of employee hours, because only a certain number of hours are covered by the TANF grant. And so we charge those hours to this salary line item, but the employees are actually in the accounting software over here in this other one. And so once we finally approve this budget, I have to go into the real accounting software. This is just a third-party add-on to our real accounting software. Once I upload the budget, then I have to go in and take some of this salary and benefits that's relatable to TANF and move it over here to this 4111. It's a little complicated, but there's also some other issues that I'm seeing and I was relatively aware of, that a lot of things are getting miscoded, and also budgets were just not, certain budgets were not being observed, which caused some problem also in our reimbursement requests, because they're pretty, once you hit your budgeted amount, you can't it doesn't matter if you spent the money, you can't get reimbursed for it because you blew past your budget. There is some capacity to do budget amendments, which we've requested some, but you will see that there's some line items in 2020 that were already passed, and we'll have to I tried to rectify some of this to be more realistic in the 2021, but I think once we start working with Margie from the association and others, we may have to put in another, I don't really know what's going to happen, to tell you the truth. And so this budget is more or less the same as last year, but I did move some money around to what I think would probably be more realistic given their expenses, like, for instance, water, sewer, garbage. I'm not, this, we're going to get charged for the exact utility amounts, but we're not, because the grant budget only gives us $2,100, that was the budget, but we still have to pay it. And so I can't just put in $2,100 even though that's what the grant budget is. I have to put in the actual amount. And then the amount that the county contributes is what's going to make up the difference. And that's the situation we're in, which I hope we can resolve at some point and get them to be self-sufficient or predominantly self-sufficient again. But I think that this budget is subject to change as we move forward in reorganizing and go down the road of trying to figure it out. But the main thing is to get, the sort of the totals plugged in that we think we're going to need, And then, later when we sort things out, we'll be able to come back in and rearrange the money, rearrange the budget as we need to without having to go through public hearings and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, as Quinn realizes and I realize, it's become a pretty complicated thing to manage since the TANF grant changed because of all the rules that they imposed. It used to be really easy, and now every single line item has very specific things that you can spend the money on, very specific hours, very specific percentages, and it's not the same for any of the line items. They're all different, and so it's really a challenging grant to manage. The other side of the DHS side is really easy. You just send them, the detailed ledger and ask for 50%, and they pay it.
So I have a question, probably for Mallory, since she's been studying this extensively. I'm just looking at the expenses, for instance, food for a crisis nursery that theoretically feeds children and babies. $300 a year seems like it's not at all going to cover it. So I'm wondering, do you have a feel for how much they ask for in donations? I mean, because honestly, along those same lines, Chris, if we're budgeting 300, but it actually costs 600, if they're not covered by donations, that's probably going to be an issue. I don't know. I don't have a feel for it, but I know 300 a year is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it might be that, let me just check. Yeah, it's in the TANF budget that I think they charge most of their food to, not the other budget that you were looking at.
Uh-huh, okay.
So all these Kroger charges are city market food. And so I'd say that most of their food budget's actually not in that $300 line item. It's in this other TANF line item that's called TANF supplies.
Okay.
I'll add that I also think while we're learning more about this, for me on the DHS side, that there's more and more I'm seeing that maybe we aren't requesting from them that we could. Our contract with them is actually budget-based and, I can't think of what I'm trying to say, but it's a split where there's that automatic, we ask for 50%, but then there's add-on costs that we can request. And where it gets even more complicated is some of that is triggered by our DCFS caseworkers and what they're coding things as. So yeah, when Chris said this is a really complicated one, I would just say that is 100% true. And that's kind of a challenge that we're working through, is all of us learning more about it. So we're making sure that we can get, all of the funding that we're eligible for. And then another thing I'd say, just to the DHS part of the funding, while that is a 5-year contract, every year we are allowed to renegotiate our funding. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and it does bring up that DCFS, the kids that come through that are separately reimbursed also, and so that's another complication. But I did notice last year anyway that like the budget, the way that the coding was happening wasn't to the maximum benefit according to how the grants were drafted. And so trying to coordinate with staff how to code so that it maximizes the two different grants and how they're budgeted was a bit of a challenge. And I did see, as we were going along, that the smaller of the grant revenue line items was getting charged up first, and then the larger one on the DHS side wasn't being hit or coded. And so, yeah, I mean, some of this is just trying to train staff on the technical financial side of things, which again, it never used to be a requirement because when it was just a straight 50-50 split of the expenses, you know, the only thing we had to worry about is the total amount, not blowing past the total of the grant. And we knew that we'd get 100% reimbursement. But now it's not like that anymore. And that just started last year. So there's been a lot of confusion, I think, with staff about how to code to best make use of the budgets that we have for these two grants.
And going forward, assuming this grant writer / grant accounting person in the clerk's office, that would become part of their job?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That'll be their ball and chain then. I'm sure Quinn would be quite happy to have that off his plate.
Yeah, this is one thing. So, and I'm sure Chris even remembers, like at the end of June last year, the state fiscal year, I had to rearrange all sorts of budget items in the different category and expenses and shuffle all out. Yeah, this is, it's something that takes several hours every month to keep coordinated and straightened out and to do the requests. And this is one of the things we definitely want a grant writer to take on, is the organization and tracking of these grants.
Right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I mean, it just kind of goes to show that whoever's going to be in that grant position, they're not just going to be, you know, on the leading edge of grant writing and getting us money. You know, the vast majority of grant management is all these persnickety details. And so that's the thing that really can be a major challenge, is trying to track all this stuff. And every single grant is different. The contacts are different. The reporting they want is different. You know, the budgets are different. Everything's different. And so, you know, if somebody were just doing that all the time and that was their job, I think it would be a lot easier than having to bounce in and try to tackle these complicated things every once in a while and then go back to doing some other complicated thing that's not even remotely associated, you know. And so it is really challenging. Or has become challenging, at least. This one has.
I mean, it's all, in small organizations, that's an ED level job description. In larger ones that have the money, it would be a CFO job description. So I'm not even sure you're going to get somebody for what you're proposing. I don't know, because I do understand
Well, I mean,
how
that's,
complicated it is.
We will have to talk about it. I mean, there is a job description that's similar to it. I mean, trying to remember where it's resource specialist or something. I mean, there are jobs out there that deal in this that aren't full-on CFOs, but it is technical, and somebody has to have a knack for details and a little bit of math and budgeting and finance, but also be good at writing. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the entry level for the clerk deputy is grade 3, which is way below probably what we'd ever be able to get somebody who had these kind of qualifications. And so it'll be something that we do need to talk about. You know, the position exists in the clerk's office for that 5th deputy. And again, you know, the entry level for it's grade 3. Depending on experience, could possibly go up to a grade 5. But in my opinion, like this particular type of grant position, you know, would probably start at a 5 and maybe go up to like a 7 to 9 grade type of thing. I don't know. I mean, we'd have to do some research to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And Renee could probably help with researching what an acceptable grade is. But I can tell you that a 3 is not. There's no way we'd ever get anybody at the entry level deputy position.
Right.
At that grade. So, I mean, it is something that when we discuss with the commission some potential, you know, changes in grades for different positions or reclassifying different positions, I think this will have to be one that we really need to talk about. Because, you know, not only are we missing out on some potential grants that we could get if we had somebody available that had that have the responsibility to draft them and get them. But I think that even with the grants we do have, we're not maximizing them well.
Right.
Because, you know, like I say, I think that just the way things get coded can impact our ability to get the full reimbursement. And I did, you know, I had to do a bunch of acrobatics with them, you know, when I was clerk to try to maximize the grant. But even on, like, for instance, on the DHS side, we closed the year at like 120,000, or closed the year, yeah, I think about 120,000. The full grant was 125, but there was no way to capture that last 5,000 just because of the way the accounting happened
Yeah.
prior to, you know, me coming on, and so.
Well,
Anyway,
I'm optimistic about this though, and I'm glad to hear Mallory say what she said about renegotiating every year, because as I've watched this budget for the last several years, I've thought there has got to be a way for DHS to ante up more money with these kind of expenses. And I did suspect we could renegotiate, but it's one of those things nobody has time to research. So thank you, Mallory, and hope that
Yeah.
goes well.
now, the DHS side's actually pretty decent. It's the TANF side, and then the TANF side is authorized by the state legislature. And by the very nature of the grant, it says temporary assistance. And so, you know, when you're trying to rely on a grant that's by its nature intended to be temporary, that's problematic also. But just the way that the grants were drafted probably maybe could have been amended. When you're doing it percentage based and the percentages don't add up to 100%, it doesn't matter how much you cut your spending, you can never get within budget, because it's all, you know, you cut your spending, but then you're also cutting the exact same percentage of your revenue. So you never get caught up.
Right.
And so that's a math problem that needs to be, you know, brought up with regard to these budgets if we want them to be more self-sufficient. Is that we can't, you know, have grants that add up to 75%. Because then you're always, no matter how much you spend, you're always going to be out the 25%.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, it's complicated. I think that this is going to have to change, and I think we'll probably have to take a close look at the budget and maybe request some budget amendments to both grants potentially. And so, like I say, what I'm trying to do here is just get the general total in, and then if we do that, then it's easy to come back later and just move line items around according to however we negotiate with DHS and the TANF side. And we have made some amendments already. Okay. Everybody ready to move on to, I think, Justice Court?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Let me switch over here. How you doing, Danley?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good. I can't, since you're still sharing the screen, I can't tell what my view is, so I apologize if it's kind of cattywampus.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right. So this is just kind of more for the board, but one thing that is different from the last time that we were looking at Casell Advantage, Renee and I have since got, you know, most of the salary and benefits plugged in, and so we can see that the 2020 budget for Justice Court total was $337, and at this point it's $341,846, so very similar, not much difference. One question that I have for you, Danilee. Well, first let me bring up this pop-up screen that has the employees on it. I'm not sure if Zoom will actually pick it up or not, so let me know if you see a pop-up come up.
Yes.
Does anybody see it? Okay, good. All right. So first up, Natalie, just sort of verify, we've got 4 positions in.
Including myself?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Is that accurate?
yeah.
And there's no vacancies or anything?
No vacancies.
All right. And then, I guess another question while we have this screen up is the overtime budget. Because I would have to plug in the overtime budget to this pop-up screen. I can't just type it straight in.
You know, we actually couldn't enter anything in the overtime budget. I didn't intend for it to be 0, but we were unable to enter anything into that field. So I would just ask that we
Yeah,
have
that's what I'm saying.
the same
So
amount.
What, 2,700?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in the years past, the clerks hadn't participated in pay for performance, and that's something that I've encouraged them all to do, and they're all doing so now. So all of them you'll see will be having their, presumed pay, performance increases and then milestones also. So that's part of the increase in salaries.
Yeah, and so that would be these here. Let me just try and plug in some COLA numbers to get this to be more accurate.
And then for myself, I've also as the judge, it's code that the judge would get any salary increases that county employees would also get. So that would include COLA. And then at the time of my appointment, there was a fair amount of back and forth over a possible salary raise dependent on a review. And then in the end, that ended up being the possibility, or the discussion of a review ended up being nixed. And then we had COVID and all of that. But I've just proposed a 3% raise for myself for this year based on being similar to what county employees get. And then also I didn't ask the administrative office of the courts for a salary survey where they can compare your case numbers, just because the courts were shut down for a number of months. And I know that the county's budget is going to be perhaps a little bit strained due to COVID, but I did pull some numbers from our court. And just so you guys are aware, the courts are catching back up to where we have been in years past, and that's without Jeep Safari car show races or anything like that. For 2018, we're about 500 cases behind of the total of 2018. And that was a number that we pulled at the beginning of this week. And we know that town's getting a lot busier. So I anticipate that we'll easily meet 2018's numbers. 2019 was a bit higher. So for 2018, there was a total of 2,240 traffic cases and 431 infractions. And for 2020, we're at 1,708 traffic cases and 301 infractions. And I think those are both numbers that will be significantly increasing. And then for last year, there's about a total of 3,500 cases. So we're getting close to that. So I think that with that being said, I just think that, town's still picking up and the courts are still having a similar revenue to what there has been in the past or will be.
Okay. So yeah, I guess we'll have to, the merit system, I guess for the judge, with the merit system, it varies by employee. So saying that, not every employee gets 3% every year. It depends on whether they're enrolled in the exemplary program.
And I'm not saying that the judges necessarily, that position, that the code necessarily requires that merit system to be incorporated into that. I'm just asking for that. I think that the COLA is definitely something that would be clearly something that would be affected by that. But the
Yeah.
merit system, perhaps not. And I didn't want to invest too much at this point where everything that's going on, I just felt like it was a proposal that would be fair to make. And that would put my salary right about equal with my chief clerk's salary. So that's also
Yeah.
something to consider.
I guess what I'm saying is normally when an employee assumes a new position, and it's a little different because you were already a county employee before, they're not eligible for an exemplary their first year, but then in their second year they're eligible for a milestone, and then in their third year they're eligible for an exemplary, then milestone, et cetera. So the first year usually is nothing. And then the second year is 3% milestone. And then if they're involved in the exemplary, then it's 3% the next year, et cetera. Just to give you an understanding of how the rest of the employees work.
Right, and I'm aware of that. I'm just saying that that's what I've asked for, and I know that it's not necessarily something that's required. I just am asking for that consideration. And then, and the reason that I say so that it's been a while since we've been through this process, but
Yeah.
the reason I mentioned the AOC and the numbers is, so what they do is they have a way of figuring, they go in and look at how many cases you've been hearing, how many cases are filed, and how many hearings you've had, et cetera. And then there's a way that they figure out based upon that, what your salary should be. And then they also compare the salary compared to what district court judges are making. And so then they would present that. And I think that, and so I didn't ask for that this year just because I knew that our numbers were down lower, and I didn't feel like that was something that I wanted to require the county or anybody else to kind of take the extra time and effort to look into, where I felt like it would probably be comparable to what it has been in the years past. But that is something that can be asked for every year. And then the county at that point then considers the number of cases and for a raise for salary and that. So that's something that I think that we're seeing a large increase in cases. And so with that in mind, I think that's something that will be revisited again. But again, just an effort of saving time and money, I didn't feel like that was something that was worthwhile to look into this year. But to give you guys a general of what kind of caseload we're handling, I don't think I've had a calendar. So we have court every Wednesday, and I don't believe I've had a calendar under 50 cases since the court has reopened. Average, it's at least 60 cases. This week I had 62. It started out higher than that, but some got taken off the calendar. Last week it was 84. Next week it's 72, maybe 74. And we're doing those kind of cases, that caseload every week that we're hearing that amount of cases. And then comparatively, our district court in Moab, they have court every other week compared to us having court every week. And last week they had, or maybe it was this week, their most recent court date, they had 35 cases. In the week or 2 weeks prior to that, they had, I think it was 50 something. So we do have a much larger caseload. And in fact, I talked to Judge Torgerson about that recently just to see what his numbers were in other places. And he said, that's really a huge caseload, and most district court judges aren't handling that kind of caseload. So I just want you to be aware that we do have an increased caseload. And so while I don't have specific numbers for you and I don't have anything specific, I am just requesting that. And I understand that it's not required, but I think it's a fair request. Thank you.
All right. Let's switch over to this other more detailed transaction for this browser here to get a little more context for the rest of these expense lines. So for subscriptions and memberships, looks like something bumped up a lot in 20.
Yeah.
So that must have been something.
I think that I can explain that. And I think that it's this Matthew and Bender subscription. And I believe that and that's a subscription to law books. And I think that in the past it had been coded out of a different account. So I don't think that, and it's appropriate to be out of the subscription and memberships, but there's money in another account to cover that. And I think that that was probably just an oversight. But with that in mind, we're going to discontinue our membership to that because it's not necessary to have the paper copy of the book in the office when we have all of that available to us online. So although there was an overage this year, we are meeting that in the middle with a decrease or with a lower request than the overage.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering if it was coded differently. For this year's budget, is there money that could be moved from another line item to cover that?
Yes, and that's what I meant. That's what I was trying to say also, that there is money from another line, and that would be the office supply and expense line that can cover that.
Okay. So let's see. Just trying to calculate here. I'm just going to make a note. To cover 210 for 2020. All right. I'll have to amend the 2020 budget to cover that.
Yes. Yeah, and there's a few other places that will need that too. That we're
All right.
just.
Yeah, maybe, it's not really a priority in the immediate sense, but, it's kind of getting actually. We've got about, another week before I have to get a tentative budget produced and try to get, a reasonable 2020 amended budget proposed also. I oftentimes amend that quite a bit before we finally approve the budget in the second meeting in December, because the closer you get to the end of the year, the more accurate you can be with these 2020 amendments. But maybe you could try to log back in and work on plugging in numbers in this green column, the current year annual projection, that you,
Okay.
For instance, pull money out of this 10,000 and then put it up whatever needs to be covered there. So the goal being to keep the totals the same, but just move money around to cover any accounts that are over.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that.
Okay. All right. So then, but looking at the historical, so if we take out the books, you're requesting 500, but it's still 325 more than's been spent in the past.
Yeah, and I didn't have too much historical information on what I was looking at initially, so I just put that number in there to be kind of a placeholder, knowing that we weren't going to be using the subscription or the books. But I think that there are memberships that I don't know if the clerks have memberships that they do annually, but there are some other memberships that would be included. So we could drop that if desired to to something closer to what's annually spent. But I think that
well, it's normally 175 normally covers it. So I guess if the budget's going to go up, I like to just have actual reason for why it's going up.
Mm-hmm.
And so normally 175 covers the subscriptions and memberships if you don't include the books.
Mm-hmm. There would still be,
Okay.
I would guess that there would still be one of the books that we purchase, and I don't know what the annual cost of that is, but I think it's probably around $100 or so.
All right, well, how about 300?
That's fine.
Haggling with, and then in travel, not a lot of travel in 2019 or 2020, but in the past, in 2018, it was 2,400. So you're expecting to kind of get back to doing more travel in 2021, or your staff?
Well, so recently, after we did this, I received an email from the state courts that they're already planning to adjust or to do the spring conferences virtually. And that's just their plan at this point. So I don't know. I mean, years past, I would say that it would be similar to what we have done in that, but with COVID, it's hard to project that number.
All right.
And there is, there would be an additional judicial conference that was added in 2020, and I attended that virtually, but so that would be an additional travel as well, potentially, if that's one that they hold in person. So I just left
All right.
it at the number of the years past. I mean, I don't, with COVID and already planning for spring virtual conferences, I don't know that that would be, that again, I don't know that that would be spent like it wasn't spent this year, but.
All right, I'm just trying to kind of get a grasp here on what the typical office supplies expense is. I
Yeah.
think probably 20 is an anomaly, maybe.
Yeah, and we have one computer that will be replacing this year out of this year's budget still. We wouldn't need to replace the monitors on that computer. But then next year we have another computer that we would be replacing also. Both of the computers are.
So we want to put that in anything that's like those kind of things should be budgeted in inventory.
Yeah, and we have
Generally-
room in there too for that.
Okay, so just so are you? I'm just trying to get a grasp here. So I mean, it's in 2018 spent 10,591, and then 2019 9285. So 10,000 is ballpark.
Mm-hmm. And also we've moved to paperless as much as possible. So we have that cut in our budget, not using as much paper and toner, which I think that would come out of office supplies and expenses, possibly out of that line. So that will, I mean, I don't know that that's only what that cost reduction is out of, but that will help in the future.
Yeah, and I think that is probably why you can buy the books and cover your office supply expenses in 2020. But I think that there's a possibility if I pull 1,700 out of this, 10,000, and move it up to subscriptions and memberships, that you might then blow past your office supplies budget.
Well, we have the travel line that's pretty much unexpended.
I would say, yeah, I think maybe it's probably better to move it out of travel.
Or the schooling and expenses line also has money in there.
Because in a normal year, you would spend, around 10,000 just on office supplies without books.
Mm-hmm.
2020 is different. And I mean, it would be great to continue on, I think being paperless is sort of like the wave of the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the courts are essentially paperless.
Yeah. All right. And then, there's sort of, for whatever reason, a lot of budgets have multiple supply lines, and so it doesn't make sense. So
Yeah,
probably
and that's
good
why we
to-
cut those.
All right.
And they
So
were
that's good.
fairly nominal amounts anyways.
Yeah.
On professional services, I did raise that from, I think it was 1,000 that was budgeted for 2020, and we've already surpassed that amount. And I've actually increased it, or proposed to increase it to 3,000. And these professional services would be for things that the court's required to do. If you'll look at that, a lot of it has been for interpreting. We use the Multicultural Center to interpret for us. And that's an expense that we can't get around. And that's even with the court being, we had no court whatsoever from the beginning of March or second week of March until the beginning of June. And so with missing those few months of court, even in our numbers to still surpass that professional services line, I thought that it would be more realistic to have a higher rate in there. And then also the other thing that you'll see in there is the Four Corners, and that's just that the court pays for the initial DUI assessment for anybody that's charged or convicted of a DUI. And I think it's only up to $75 that the court pays for that. And also on that, at the beginning of the year and at the end of last year, we didn't see a lot of DUIs, but as the year's gone on, this summer and leading into this fall, I'm actually starting to see a lot more DUIs coming across. And I think that that's kind of related to, in my opinion, the new .05 law that the legislature passed a few years ago that just went into effect not all that long ago. And that I think that law enforcement was perhaps not inclined to cite people on that new 05 law. But I think that I know that I'm definitely starting to see an increase again in those DUIs. So I think that we will start seeing a lot more of the DUIs. Therefore, we would begin to be paying more of those assessment treatment fees for those too. So.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it has bumped up a lot since 2019.
Yeah.
Went from, it more than doubled, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is a kind of a new expense, but it does look like it's relative to what we saw in 2019, close to. All right, so then cell phones staying the same. Again, consolidated supplies, miscellaneous services, I guess it's probably just a junk drawer, huh, maybe?
I think so, yeah. That's a good way to call it.
Then inventory, this is where you would want to budget for computers, computer monitors, keyboards, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think that line is sufficient for that. And actually, now that you're mentioning that, I did have a note, and I had talked to Matt and Renee a little bit about the COVID expense line, and there is a need. We do have a need to purchase like another iPad or tablet, and that would be to use for when we're doing court virtually, and that's at least through the end of 2020. And honestly, I expect it to be well into the spring. And so we have a number of people that are indigent and or don't have access to this kind of technology. And so what we've been doing is there's a jury room right next to the courtroom, and when we hold court, they come into the jury room and we have that line conferenced in, but they're just on the phone, and this creates a problem for some of these indigent people when they need to go to trial, as well as it's not as easy to communicate sometimes over the phone, and being able to see them and have them to have access to an iPad or some kind of computer of sorts, but without being able to really manipulate it would be very beneficial, especially when we go to trial, that they would, doing it over the phone, they're not able to see documents that are presented, and creates a problem that way. And then they're also not able to present their own documents in that way too. And having that tablet or iPad would help facilitate that greatly. I know that some of the other courts are already doing that. And the reason that we talk about a tablet or an iPad rather than a spare computer is the audio quality on them seems to be much better. That we also don't have necessarily the keyboards that we're dealing with. And then we can also put it up, elevate it or put it up on a podium and then have them stand a distance back from it so that we don't have to deal with the sanitization of it in between each hearing. So I think that there is room in the COVID expenses. Would that be something that could just come out of that COVID account, or is that something that we need to get out of our budget now, or?
Well, Chris Kaufman, what do you think about that? Is he on?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you repeat the question?
I'll make it much briefer. We have indigent people and just some people that have limited access to technology, and they still have to appear in court. So what we've been doing is having them use the court's conference line to be calling in. But what we would really like and what would best serve their interests as well as ours is to have a tablet or iPad in there available for them so that they're able to see the proceedings, and I can also see them, as well as when we go to trial, for them to be able to see exhibits and other documents that are presented. And then also allow for much easier sanitization of the area.
So what she's asking basically is, can we charge that to the COVID account?
We can if it's spent this year, but not next year.
Great. I would like to order it like right away. Especially since we know that we're continuing on this for a while.
Okay. So anyway, besides that,
Thank you. Sorry.
2,000 and 2,800 for 2021 is basically the same as what was spent in 2019. And hopefully, the schooling opportunities are better next year than this year.
Yeah.
And so,
this year I've been lucky in that a lot of the schooling they've been offering for free, or on grant tuition. So I've taken advantage of all of those. So I've had a lot of schooling. It's just been free. So.
All right. So, I mean, the majority of the increase is clearly going from 337 total to 351. It's pretty clear that the majority of that's in salary and benefits.
Yeah, and the salary line isn't.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just is what it is. I mean, I guess there's some discretion that we can discuss with the commission about your salary. But besides that, it just is what it is. We did factor in the increase in insurance renewal and all that kind of stuff, plus the merit increases for everybody. And so
yeah,
I would say this looks pretty good to me. And, the majority of the increase is relative to salary and benefits, and everything else is...
yeah, and the professional service, but that's absolutely necessary.
But it is relative to 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That 3,000 is pretty close to the 2,750 that was spent in 2019.
Right.
Just wait until the UTV speed law goes into effect.
Well, yeah.
Let's not talk about it. All right.
Let's
Anybody have any questions for Dana Lee on the Justice Court budget? So I guess one question, and maybe we should bounce up there real quick before I let you go, and just talk about the revenue side, if I can find it. Is this, no, it's going to be in this one. So this may, I mean, maybe I can ask you to try to do some projections on Justice Court fines. You know, we had a pretty big year before you took over, $359,000 in 2019.
Yeah, and the 2019 numbers were up significantly from 2018. So I think had
Yeah.
we not had COVID, I think we probably would have been right on line with 2019. Judging by, you know, trends of how things would have been going.
So in terms of budget for 2021, I mean, what would your recommendation be for trying to establish some guesstimate about 2021 totals?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I would say that's kind of a hard question with COVID, right? We're all waiting to see what's going to happen this spring, but I'm going to anticipate that I would say that I would anticipate 2021 looking similar to what 2020 is, just because we'll probably be coming out of going through the winter and the spring similar to last year, other than at this point, I don't see the courts shutting down again like we did. And that was mandated by the state. I think that we have with WebEx hearings, which are similar to Zoom, I think that the courts will be able to stay open, unlike they did this spring. But I would, on the safe side, I would say similar to 2020. On the hopeful side, I would hope that we could easily match 2019. I do know that
so I mean, I haven't really reprojected. When I last projected Justice Court fines, it was about 216,000. And I'll reproject now with more data. But still, you know, it's a huge difference between 2019 and 2020. It's going to be.
Well, yeah. And the other thing to consider right now, too, is our actual. So our actual numbers at 184 compared to, and I think that 2020, I think, is going to end up looking like 2018 did. And so I saw your actual number is 184. So just so you have an idea also, it takes about a month to 2 months for a case, once it's come in, once the citation is written, to make its way into court and to have that fine issued. So with that being said, when you look at the 184 number and we're towards the middle of October, if that's when you calculated it, that is really realistically probably looking at where we were in mid-August. And we all know that it's picked up significantly from mid-August.
Yeah, and I mean,
when I say it's picked up, I mean, you know, as town gets busier, so do the courts and more citations are issued. So I think that, you know, I think that you could guess that those numbers are about 2 months behind of where we'll end up at. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I can account for that.
Yeah. So I guess I would say that I would think that using the 2018 projection may, in the end, be more accurate, because it does look like, when I look at our monthly case reports, it does look like we'll probably end up fairly close on track with that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is to, as far as fines, the prosecutors, we are issuing a little bit of reduced fines because of COVID and some of the circumstances people are in. We've had a significant increase in indigent persons and the public defender being appointed. That's something that I've considered applying a restitution fee for people that are appointed to the public defender. But it's been hard to implement this year in my mind, where we've had so many people that are out of work, and a lot of the people are truly at zero income or living solely on government benefits, which doesn't make a lot of sense for, if they're receiving unemployment from the government, for them to pay that money back to the government for assistance that the government is required to provide them. So I haven't issued.
Well, it's different governments, though. But
It is a
I get
different.
it.
Well,
No, I get
kind
it.
of, yeah.
So,
It's something that I'm considering and plan to do in the future, but at this point with COVID, I haven't implemented it just because I don't feel that it's appropriate at this time. But it is a consideration for the future. And then the reduction in fines, the lower for, considering COVID, haven't been significant. And I don't think that's a number that you would really even notice at the end of the year, but it is something that's happening, and on an individual basis, it's probably fair and appropriate, and it's not given in all circumstances, but a few.
all right. So, yeah, maybe I'll take a look. I mean, I think that from like June on, and also taking into account that the money, lags from when it was actually collected,
Yeah.
that, I can try to figure out how things are looking, after we got sort of back to normal. We're not back to normal, and who knows what normal is, but try to project that and see. But 2018 might be the better number to use than 2020.
Yeah.
I don't think 2019 is realistic, but 2018
No.
might be that 277. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
Okay.
like that's a pretty realistic comparison between 2018 and now, and that's based off of looking at our numbers for the whole year as well,
Okay.
for those 2 years.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions for Danilee and the Justice Court before we move on? All right. Thank you, Danilee. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
You too. Okay. Next up is County Sheriff. Let me navigate over there. Are you with us, Steve?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay.
How you doing?
Oh, another day of paradise. How about you guys?
Yep. Sure.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So, again, starting off with, so we're on the sheriff's budget, Department 4211 in the general fund. So Renee and I think we've got all the main salary and benefits in, but we do need to discuss some of these others, Steve.
Okay.
Overtime. I still need to go in and I think actually a little bit of a, I can't remember, there's something that I need to do to get the SAR salaries to show up. It's a little bit of a software. So I think that one I might have to come back to you, but in terms of, overtime, what do we need to do?
Good question. I think, this year, I think we can go ahead and, and drop it down some more, but next year, I think we need to kind of hold, because looking at what our trends are going to be, I think we're going to continually be busy. I think with the staffing issues that we have, I just think overtime is going to continue to kind of stay up. I think we'll get a little bit of help, with a couple of positions, for next year that we talked about that didn't get filled last year. And then, I have a new BLM position I need to talk to you guys about as well that I think is going to help some of this a little bit, but I don't know. That's with COVID and everything else. I'd like to say, yeah, drop it, but I just don't know. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Well, what do we got at that? Like 142-ish?
Yeah. I think you could drop it. I think you could drop it to 100,000 easy probably this year.
Yeah.
Because we only got 2 months of the year left, but we're busy too. So.
Yeah, I mean we're at 65,000 right now.
Yeah.
Spent.
So I think we're going to be good.
So 2019 was 131,000. So was 2018, a little more, 131,000.
So, with that 2 months and stuff on, I bet we could probably be safe at 110,000. To finish out the year, we should be fine.
Yeah, but what about 2021? So, I mean, here's the thing, like you're saying, all right, we're going to bring on 2 new positions, plus maybe this BLM, and we can talk about that. And
right.
The budget. You see what I'm getting at? Like, let's hire you 2 new guys, maybe 3, and still increase the overtime budget.
I don't see need to increase it. I think that I wouldn't go anything past that 141 where we're hanging right about the 130. I'm really hoping the additional positions, yeah, we're always going to have overtime, but I'm hoping maybe with that additional positions, maybe we can reduce it some.
Well, I mean, when I say increase it, I'm saying relative to actuals, not budgets. So
sorry.
When I'm looking at the actuals, it's the highest it's ever been looks like
135.
131 is the highest it's ever been.
Right.
In actuals. And then was a little bit less than that in 2019. So, when we base it off actuals, I mean, I'm looking at like 131.
Right.
Is not going higher than what we've spent in the past.
Yeah. I think that's a fair number.
All right. So I'm just going to put it in the comments there because it's a little technical for me to enter it and I have to do it.
Right. So while you're doing that, I'll talk about the BLM position a little bit.
All right.
We've been working with the BLM over the last few years about funding a patrol position that will basically work with the BLM on a day-to-day basis on public lands issues, UTV issues, cattle rancher permit issues. Basically, they go hand in hand with the BLM. It's kind of went back and forth, but when I talked to them Wednesday, the contract's actually been through its first legal review through Christina and through the BLM, and it looks like it's going to be a 5-year contract at $120,000 a year. So it's going to be pretty substantial. I think it's going to be a great deal.
So 5-year, 120 a year. So that's what we pay?
No, that's what they're going to pay us.
Oh, okay. So
Woohoo! Good job.
So that will be revenue that we'll have to factor in.
Yeah.
On the revenue side.
Right.
And then, so I mean, what would we be paying this position?
Basically, we would, for this year?
I mean, like which grade, I guess I'm asking, or
what patrol deputy.
1, 2, or 3?
My guess is that it'd probably be a deputy 2. because I'm sure that some of the senior guys are looking at that position to be a Deputy 2 or Deputy 3, depending on which one put in.
All right. So I just want to take a quick look at how that shakes out. Here's the Deputy 2. Yeah, so that's good. Should cover, you know, like salary, benefits, and overtime, so.
Right. You know, and then the part of the contract is we provide the vehicle and stuff as well, but that'll
Yeah.
come in, which won't be bad.
Chris, this is Renee. I tried to add that position in as a proposed, and I just couldn't remember how to do it in Advantage. Do I have to export all the employees, add the position, and then re-import it?
I can do that.
Okay.
It doesn't, yeah, for whatever reason, it's been problematic in the past trying to add in lines within this program.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to try to remind myself how it works best, so I'm not really
Okay.
sure. But
So that's the only position that's missing from Steve's budget. The other two deputy positions that we had on the hiring freeze are in there.
all right. Okay, let's go to, yeah, like I say, for some reason, there's some bug in here that I have to fix to get search and rescue to show up. I'm sure they're entered in, they're just not coming through.
Right.
I remember that happening last year also.
Right.
So,
They are in, they're in that salaries total.
yeah, and like I said, there's some weird thing I have to do to get them to actually display. The sheriff's department's really like the only department that has multiple different salary line items, and it throws this software for a loop. Because normally there's only one salary, one benefits line item. This one's more complicated, and so it requires some messing around to get it to show up. For on-call, you're up to 37,000 so far this year, which is way over budget. 2019, you were 39. So that 40,000 mark is probably where you're going to end up at. That's for 2019 and 2020, I'll bet. I'll have to project that out. But I mean, is it, what are the dependencies on how that figure gets, I mean, it's been variable. In 2018, it was 20,000, then almost doubled in 1 year to 40.
A lot of that when our staff was down to 40%, we had so many guys on call.
Yeah. So you think that's,
plus our investigators are still on call as well, along with some of the supervisors. And then if we have, like, somebody takes vacation or ends a sick leave, then one of the deputies, instead of having a 24-hour shift, one of them will end up being on call to help cover.
yeah, but I mean, if we add these new positions and we get them filled, is it going to help with that?
Yes, I'm hoping it does.
Because, I mean, typically it looks like you run between 20 and 26, and then all of a sudden it jumped up to 40. So what are you thinking? I mean, if we get these 3 new positions filled, I'm thinking, you know, hopefully we can get somewhere between 25 and 40. Some compromise there because...
Right. Well, yeah, because we got to... That's the whole point of us being full staff is to help knock that down and help knock the overtime down. I mean, like I say, we're always going to have overtime, but we should be able to start knocking it down. And we may be looking at have to reschedule on some of the investigators to knock some of that down.
All right, yeah, because you're way over on it this year.
Yeah.
I mean, 25 would normally be before 2019, 25 would have been
Right.
a pretty reasonable number. So what do you think for 2021 then? I think you're running, last couple of years you've been running real hot on it, but if we can
I'd
get
say
it.
2021, let's keep it at, let's hold it at 30, and we'll go from there.
Did I put it in the wrong line, or is that the, okay. And then search and rescue does sometimes have a little bit of overtime, it looks like.
Hey,
Probably
hey,
should
Chris,
put-
it's Jim Webster here. And,
Yeah.
you know, the overtime thing for search and rescue is totally dependent on if we have an ongoing long-term search. Like when we have somebody drowned in the river, we end up putting people on the bridge and, you know, having 24-hour coverage looking for the unfortunate body to pass by. So on those years when we don't have a land search or a river search, we don't have overtime except for in really rare cases. So it's a crapshoot for OT for SAR.
Yeah. Well, 1,000 is kind of in the average range.
I like to keep that just as a just in case kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, normally you do have some every year. All right. So now let's get past then. Like I said, I'll need to go in and fix a bug to get search and rescue and then plug these other numbers in after the fact. But moving on to subscriptions and memberships. Take a look at historical spending here. There's quite a variance. I'm not sure if it's like a coding issue or just something. I mean, in 2018 you spent $6,000. Then in 2019 you spent $1,900. Year to date we're at $3,200. So it's pretty variable, this one.
Right. Well, and what it is between 18 and 19, Sheriff's Association raised their dues.
All right. But it went down. I mean, that's the kind of quizzical thing.
Yeah, it went down, but it should hang right around that 32 to 4,000 mark, pretty easy.
Have you spent everything you're going to spend out of there this year?
Yep.
So, and then are you adding anything for next year?
No, that should all hang pretty much the same.
All right. Well, I think then 34 would probably cover it because you're at 32. And so if we go 34, that gives a little cushion, but it's relative to the actual. Public notices, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but I don't know what this 2016 number is. Spent $2,400 in public notices, but
And we had that big sheriff's sale that we had to do a lot of advertisement on.
right. But normally, you know, it's less than 100.
Yeah, unless we have some big sale or some sheriff's sale, it's usually pretty quiet.
What's a sheriff's sale like?
That's when a court orders us to sell property.
Oh, all right.
We do it on the steps of the courthouse.
All right. I think we bump that down to 200 then. I mean, unless you're expecting. All right, travel. You're probably you might go over budget already. You're at 20 on your budget, and you're about 18,000 year to date. And 2019 was a big travel year. I don't know if that was associated with. I mean, I would think that the jail. I don't know. Why was 2019 so high in travel?
It could have been a lot of guys going to training. Expeditions, what else was it, Daryl?
It was like almost double normal.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, for a normal year, 20 would cover it. I don't know what happened in 2019, but it was like quite a bit up there for some reason.
Let's see what it is. Just out of curiosity.
But anyway, I mean, you may go a little above 20 this year. Still got.
Yeah, I don't see us worse unless we get a bunch of expeditions and that kind of stuff. We should be pretty.
All right.
Not going a lot.
All right, that's probably all right then. Office supplies, again, we're seeing quite a bit of variability there. For some reason, 2019 was pretty low. I don't know why.
Well, we've been trying to move the paperless and move everything over and do it, so hopefully that's kind of reflecting back on that a little bit, but
Yeah.
contracts and stuff, so.
Well, I'd probably guesstimate you'll end up at around 5,500 this year. We're at 45 now.
Yeah, it won't be more than that.
So you think you really need 7 next year?
Yeah, I keep it at that because we get busy again.
Well, you're going paperless, though.
We're trying.
All right. So equipment maintenance, what are you planning on spending out of that one for next year?
That one's going to depend upon a lot on what we do with vehicles.
Yeah.
Because right now, since we've lost the lease with horsepower, and we're kind of moving back, if we move to the enterprise lease deal, the maintenance will be nothing, because they'll pick that up. But if we stay with Yield Fleet and start purchasing our own vehicles, it's going to be pretty high, because we've got some stuff now that we're trying to keep on the road.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what from what I'm seeing from Enterprise's proposal, probably end up recommending that to the commissioners. Which I haven't entirely sorted out, because there's both, there's a schedule for bringing new leases on and then selling off some county vehicles.
Right.
Do you own any vehicles at all, or are they all leased at this point?
No, we've still actually a lot of our old cars are still around. We still have 4 of the horsepower leases that'll go back in March?
2 this month, 1 next.
Yeah, 2. Yeah, so
4 in March.
yeah. So we've got 2 that went back this month, 1 that'll go back next, and then 4 that'll go back in March, and that'll finish us out with horsepower. So all of those will have to be replaced, plus the other ones. I mean, if we were looking to replace just what we've lost in leases, it'd be about $350,000 in new purchases. That don't include the trucks that are the vehicles that are coming up on the end of their life cycle that are in play now. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's your opinion on what we should do? Have you taken a close look at Have you taken a close look at the Enterprise proposal?
I think it's a great deal. I think it's way for what they can do for the whole county is less than what it would cost me just to get back into base vehicles.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think so also. If we do go with Enterprise, then what do you think equipment maintenance is going to be?
I think you could probably go to probably 20,000. Because we're really not going to have any maintenance. Everything will be under warranty.
Yeah, well, what will you spend the $20,000 on then?
Yeah, if we have radio issues, occasionally we're going to have to put a set of tires on. I mean, there'll be a few odds and ends things, but not much. You know, and if we watch it for a year, I mean, I think we've consistently seen our fleet stuff or vehicle maintenance stuff should be going down.
All right. Okay, moving on to utilities. Obviously 2020 is kind of a weird year, but 2019 was 62,000, so 64 is pretty good, I would say.
Yep.
Request. And then on the lease side, I guess this is, you leave that blank so you don't know.
The lease stuff was for the horsepower stuff, so we won't need to worry about that.
Well, we got to worry about enterprise, though.
Yeah, well, and as enterprise, that's the question that I had is do I need to budget for my leases under enterprise, or is that done as a county as a whole?
Well, I imagine we'll split it out.
Okay.
And especially if it encompasses multiple funds, which it probably will.
Right.
So I'll have to go and dig into that enterprise proposal to figure that out. And then try to split it up. And I think Cody may have already done that for me. He sent me some stuff. I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, the stuff he gave me doesn't show the breakdown. It shows the entire fleet, so.
Yeah, well, I asked him for a breakdown, and so I haven't really looked to see what he gave me yet. All right. Fuel, 2017 was 67,000, or 65,000. 2018 was 65. 2019 went down quite a bit for some reason, almost 11,000. So I guess 66 is the normal budget, which would cover prior to 2019. 2019 was a lot lower.
Right.
I don't know why.
I don't either.
Anyway, 66 is a good request relative to, you know, before 2019. I don't know what happened with 2019. I wonder if there's something got miscoded. I don't know. Anyway. And then professional and technical, and the budget's the same, but it seems quite a bit higher than what the actual expenditures are.
Well, and what it is we actually, some of the, like through Lexipol and some of our other stuff that was being coded other places, I moved it into there because that actually fit the line item better than what it was. So Lexipol and Spillman and all those contractual stuff got moved into there.
Is that split out between the jail also, or what? Isn't that also budgeted in the jail?
The jail has it's a different company. It's not Lexipol, but they split the Spillman bill with us. Part of it came out of the jail and part of it came out of us.
So where did you move it from?
I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at my 19 or the 18 budget to see where it was. I don't remember.
So you think you're going to spend 55,000? You're at 34
No,
so far.
I think we're pretty close to being done. I'm professional. Well, hold on to that because if we've got polygraphs and psychologicals on new employees to do, and that's where that comes out of as well. So we're still going to have some expenses come out of that.
You got a Motorola in here. That's in there?
Spillman. That's Spillman. Motorola bought Spillman.
Was this Samantha is supposed to go to,
Yeah.
when is this? Is it February? I guess that was or no.
Yeah, that's where we were calling her out of on that part-time position.
Okay, so that was pre-COVID, that's why this one didn't get charged with the COVID?
Yeah.
All right. So how much more do you think you're gonna spend?
I think we could keep it at 50 and be fine.
So, cell phones, about the same. Closed out 2019 at 9670. Special department supplies. What do you code to this one? All your,
That's all disposable stuff, so bullets, those kind of things, targets, ammunition, anything that's disposable.
what accounts for the variation? Like, for instance, in 2018, it was 51,000 almost, and then dropped down to...
Well, the one thing, if you go back and look at that, we haven't made an ammo purchase yet this year. We've tried to hold off, to hold costs down. And that's probably where you're seeing the difference in that.
Well, that was between, so I'm talking between 2018 and 2019, the change. We're close right now to what we spent for 2019. So we spent 35 in 2019, we're up to 34,755. So you say you haven't bought ammo yet?
We haven't bought ammo yet.
Did you
Like
buy
I say,
it?
we've tried, with COVID, we've tried to hold everything back as much as we can.
Well, I'm just saying in 2019, you spent 35,000, 10,000 less than
Right.
last. So you're going to spend 45 next year?
Yeah.
Now my computer's locking up on me. You're asking for too much, Steve. Can't handle it.
I thought I'm asking for less, is what I'm trying.
Uh-oh. Kind of need my computer to work.
Yeah, Chris, I can't see your screen anymore. I can see your desktop, but there's no Zoom screen.
Well, I might have to, wonder what the deal is here.
Well,
No,
mine
you-
locks up too, if that's any consolation.
What happened?
You got the Zoom screen back up
My
there,
work
Chris.
computer locked up too. I'm trying to change screens and it won't let me do it either.
I'm afraid that if I close out of it and restart it, we're going to lose everything we just did. Maybe I can't really even see what I've done. Oh, it came back. Let me try and reshare it. All right, now we're back. Better save before that happens again. All right, so leave it at 45, you're saying, for special department
Yeah.
supplies?
Yep.
All right, then we got all the uniform allowances. I don't really want to go through all that. Just everybody's uniform allowance is $960 a year. All right, so what do you got for capital equipment then? Have you got a list?
I don't think we're gonna have anything for capital.
What did you put in 84,000 for?
Oh, that was the hold on, my bad. I'm having a brain cramp. That's the radios from last year. That's the radio upgrade we did not do last year that we want to do this year. Sorry.
So so you want to do it, when you say this year, you mean 2020?
No, I figured I gave you that money back for COVID money, so I figured I wouldn't be able to I'd have to put it into 2021.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't, it's still in both budgets, so we got to pick which one, 2021 or 2020.
You tell me what's best for you, because I thought I counted that money gone that you needed it.
Well, it didn't happen, so it's still in your budget for this year.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'll get radios ordered.
All right, and so zero it out for 2021?
Yep.
Or not? All right. Okay, so we'll leave it in 2020 then, and it's still there. Although I have a vague recollection that we budgeted that somewhere else, but I don't know. We'll have to check here.
Okay, that's what that.
I thought we put it in capital, but how much are those radios each? Or what are we upgrading? Is it upgrade to the radios themselves, or is it one chip?
Yeah, we're upgrading the radios themselves. Basically, what we're doing is we're moving our system to a VHF and 800 system where we just have VHF now. We're going to pick up 800 capability.
Yeah, and
that's
so I guess
kind of what the whole state's doing. It's going both ways.
Yeah, and so are those radios, any of them 5,000 or more each?
They're dang close. I want to say they were 46, but we found a place to get them a little cheaper, or we found a way to do it a little cheaper. So no, they're going to be in the 3,000 to 4,000 range for the mobiles, and the handhelds are going to be about the same. So I don't think there'll be anything over 5,000.
All right. Well, it wouldn't really technically be capital equipment. Then it'd be more inventory.
Okay.
So it seems like we were considering a lease at one point.
There is a potentiality of a lease.
So you don't know yet. So you don't know if you're going to buy them or lease them?
Last time we talked about leasing them, but I think I'd rather buy them outright and not pay the interest. And this won't cover all of them, but it'll be a good start.
All right. And then you got another big request for inventory. What's that composed of? I mean, in 2019 you spent 26.
Yeah, on that one I can't remember what that one was, and to be honest, Shannon entered these numbers for me when I had COVID. So, but I think we could drop that.
Throwing Shannon under the bus again.
Hey,
all right.
No, I'm not throwing him under the bus. He damn sure helped me. He was my lifesaver.
That's not fair. I am listening.
What's
Steve.
that?
I am listening, Steve.
I know you heard it. I wasn't throwing you under the bus. And I can't remember what.
Well, I like to see, like a list of actual things you're going to buy.
Yeah,
so,
I do too.
If you guys could come up with a list for both 2020 and 2021, because you've only spent $9,900, but you've got $75,000 budgeted, and so.
And I'm trying to remember why we did it. I can't remember why we did it, but that's so I can't produce it, and I am not going to hold to that where I can't produce it.
All right. Well, I'm going to zero it out then until you give me a list, and so if you can come up with.
That's fine. Yeah, I can do that.
All right. And then schooling, Hopefully, yeah, better opportunities next year than this year.
Yeah, things got a little slim this year.
And then obviously, I guess if we bring 3 new people on, might be some schooling. Is that where you would do code any kind of academy expenses or anything, or what?
Yeah, there'll be some academy, well, because the academy, most of that the state will pay, but we'll have some travel time in that, but we're gonna have a lot of schooling, because if Kim retires, we're gonna be bringing up a new investigator, that's gonna be a lot of training. A lot of our instructorships are gonna be up. So we're gonna have a lot of people, once we can start moving pretty freely again, we got a lot of people to get up to speed.
Okay. Kim will retire when he dies.
Well, that's what I keep telling him, but he's saying he's gonna quit before the end of the year.
That's what he said last year. All right.
And the year before, and the year before.
So, search and rescue, Jim, is this like your supply? What is this line for?
Okay, so that's that's kind of our, that's our operating expense line, and we make just a lot, about 150 purchases a year for gear, for equipment repairs. We bring all of our rolling stock. If we do, for the work we don't do on our Rangers and Razors, we'll take it to a vendor. Tires, subscriptions, supplies and materials, training and travel. So a lot of these categories that you have for the sheriff's office, we kind of lump them all together in this category. And
Well, 35 is pretty close to 2019, so that looks reasonable.
Yeah. We usually spend pretty much all of it.
So then, while we're at it, why don't we skip down to your capital line, which has 20 in it.
It had
What is
20 in
that?
it. Well, I'm surprised that, let's see, let me look for it here on, okay. And I see that for this year, it's only 5245, and it should be, I mean, you know, we got those carports, which I had intended for those to get put into that account. It looks like maybe it didn't all.
How much was the carport?
I think it was close to 20,000. It was like 18 or 19,000 total.
I'm pretty sure we you know, anything that's going to be 5,000 or more has to be coded to the Fund 34. The auditors don't like us to put capital expenses in the general fund budget. We have our capital budget for the general fund, which is Fund 34. So I'm pretty sure I would have coded that over in the Fund 34. I mean, I can take a look real fast and see if it shows up, if we can remember what the title of that invoice was. When did we pay the money for it? This year or last year?
It was this year. I'm not
Does any of
seeing it
these-
on. No.
Maybe, I wonder if it got coded to your donation.
Ooh, I hope not.
Well, I don't know. We got to figure out where it got coded, I guess. Actuals, it's not in there either.
Mm-mm. Well, that's
don't-
good. I'll look. I don't know. I don't have that file in front of me right now, so I'd have to dig it up.
Who was the vendor? Where'd they come from?
You know, it's I'm drawing a blank on them. They came out of Lehigh, I think. Let's see if I can run into my home office and find that.
Anyway, I mean, that's more of a coding issue, but if we move it, over here, then it would be, if you already spent, I mean, you say that was like 20,000?
Yeah, it was under 20, but it wasn't, it was over 15, as I recall. So it was, close to what we had had in that budget for this year. And so my thoughts on some of the things that we really need to do at that EOC, and I don't know where this would all fall, but when I think capital, I think building improvements. But we have a lot of need for upgrading the electrical system in particular at the EOC to bring things either up to code or make things safer. Like we should have some lights that we can turn on and off in those carports because we use those at night. It's pitch black in there. We need to have drop cords in that EOC in the bays so that instead of having extension cords all over the place and draped over the girders, we need to have actual drop cords because we keep all of our equipment plugged in with trickle chargers. Same thing for outside. We need more outside electricity, some motion lights. We don't even have a light switch at the back door to come when you come into the building from the yard. So we always leave lights on there for us and for Classic when they come back and forth in the middle of the night, which we do all the time. So those are some of the things that I would, my placeholder would be the capital budget, but I don't know where appropriately where all that would go. So,
I mean, I don't know that it would be considered capital because it's kind of more almost like building maintenance or something.
I was going to say, that's where all that's been done in the past is through the building maintenance.
Yeah, so there's not a line item in search and rescue for that in the budget.
No, we've done it through Sean and Marvin in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. But besides that, for 2021, for 2021, do you have any equipment or other capital purchases that would be 5,000 or more?
Probably not. I don't have any big vehicular replacement needs, although, and this goes back to the wait a minute, going back to what your discussion on leasing for vehicles. We've got one of our trucks is that pulls that big box trailer. It's got a Ranger and a Razor in it, is on its last legs. So that I could see that F-250 being replaced with something that is either a leased vehicle or a purchased vehicle. But
hey, Jim, that's already been addressed with the lease. I've already talked to Cody.
Okay, so that we could. That's good. So should that be in this budget for?
We'll talk about it offline, not on this, but it's been addressed.
Okay. All right. Well, then I don't think we need anything in capital this year or next year. Oh, is it gone?
So back up then to the drug task force. I mean, this one, well, this is always had a budget that hardly ever gets spent. So what's the deal with it? What's its status?
Status right now is it's not being done. We're independently doing it. We're not doing it as a task force. So
I mean, there's something being charged to it. 5,200 so far.
So there's been probably some buys and some of that they've done just through. So
it looks like.
okay.
something for the dog, but then also some kind of Verizon wireless.
Yeah, they've, it's one of the, it's a phone for the guy that's working narcotics.
All right, so is that pretty much all there's going to be, is just a phone charge to it?
No, there's some potential to have some buys and that kind of stuff taken out of it. We can drop it, but I would just as soon keep some money in there.
Well, how much do you think you need then? Like 6, 7?
Yeah, go 7.
Where am I here again? So, but this year, do you expect anything more than just those vet charges and phone bill?
Well, like I say, there's a chance that if an informant or something comes online, that we could be doing controlled buys and some of that.
Helicopter.
That's just, you know, that's one of them. If we end up contracting with a helicopter, which we haven't in the last 2 years, so it's basically we kept it around for Easter. But I think you can close that one out. I think you can zero it.
All right.
Because any of that stuff we do now, if it's for a rescue, it's reimbursable.
All right.
Don't you need to keep it in the budget though, for, even though it gets reimbursed?
No, that's like I say, we'll be fine.
I still think, you know, like even, yeah, I think that it's small enough that, computer's misbehaving again.
Blame it on the jail, not search and rescue or the sheriff this time.
Okay.
Yeah, Shan.
All right, so then you got your Easter weekend, which we obviously didn't have this time.
No, you can close that one out.
For this
We
year,
need
but
to keep
not-
it.
Yeah. And then,
Keep it.
all right, Jim, search and rescue inventory.
All right. In what I've been holding on to that for, and I don't think we spent anything this year, but that would be going back to the radio discussion. We are kind of almost in dire straits with our radios right now, with a lot of them going just way beyond their lifetime, and they're not the analog radios are not replaceable anymore. They can't be repaired in many cases. We are looking at getting a laptop computer to replace an old laptop that we've got that we would use out in the field on a search, and a kicker motor for one of our for our jet boat SJX, so that we've got a little outboard that we would use to motor around, especially if we had a problem with the main motor. So 10,000 is appropriate. It's probably not enough, but I'd feel comfortable with having that line item stay where it is. And we had, based on COVID this year, we chose not to make any purchases out of that this year, which is why it's zeroed out so far.
All right. You ready to start billing again?
Well,
we're losing
Steve,
our butts on search and rescue.
Yeah, part of part of what happens is we
You
get,
only get like 28,000 back from the state for those cards.
yeah, well, that's including reimbursements, you mean?
Yeah, whatever it is. Those, I mean, the search and rescue revenue that comes back to us is only like 28,000.
Right.
So, you know, it's like, I don't know what I guess the total search and rescue budget is probably maybe 200,000 plus. So obviously heavily subsidized.
I'll let Steve answer that.
Problem you have now, Chris, is under state statute, the billing, if you can't, you have to prove that it was an egregious for the bill, or the state doesn't want us billing.
You have to prove that it's
basically prove negligence on the billing under the new SAR billing statute. I'll get you a copy of it.
all right.
You know, some
Well,
of
that's the end.
something that came up from Andrea, and I
But
don't,
why, you know, it needs to be zeroed out though, right? If we're not going to do any billing.
Yeah, you can zero that out.
I don't know how that got in there. What were you saying, Jim?
well, I'd received a email from Andrea Brand about asking if she gives the revenue from Sand Flats, a little bit of that revenue comes to search and rescue. And I don't know what the resolution on that was, but I think it was $10,000. But that's, you know, just when we talk about funding search and rescue to offset that, you know, 200,000 or wherever it is each year, we get TRT revenue. We have been traditionally getting money from the from Sand Flats income, and of course the reimbursement, which we, you know, try to maximize every year as much as we can. Most of the mileage that we pay out gets reimbursed through the reimbursement program from the state. So we pay for vehicle mileage with the county vehicles and personal vehicles. Most of that is reimbursed.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, the subsidy is high, I agree, but it's not, you know, there's more to the revenue income going into SAR than just the reimbursement from the state.
Wow. So yeah, 38,000 then. I mean, I don't count TRT. TRT is subsidy, and so it's not search and rescue generated. But anyway, I mean, I don't know. It might be something to consider, but you know, it's like I say, it's mostly subsidized through public money. TRT is public money.
True.
All right, so that's the end of the sheriff's budget. Anybody have any questions or comments on the sheriff's budget before we, and the search and rescue, for the most part, before we move on? All right, so I don't know if anybody's, I guess we'll check, plugged in the emergency management.
Yeah, Jennifer Swenson should have done that. For the rest of the commission that does not know, Rick retired effective October 16th. So he is no longer with the county. So we're getting Jennifer up to speed. She's been working with Angela on the grants. And she basically, I just asked her to kind of transfer last year's budget over to this year's. And she's trying to get her feet underneath her to where everything's at and what's going on right now. So that's kind of where that's at. But Jan, you're on this call, right?
You are unmuted. Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
So this budget is kind of a split budget. There's a general fund component, 40% of the emergency management manager or director or whatever it's called comes out of the general fund, and 60% comes out of Fund 17, I think, the 911 surcharge fund. So that position's split. And then I'm not super familiar with this budget either. But we can kind of look at it from the perspective of past actuals. You know, from, so I guess we'll just kind of skip past the salary and benefits. I explained that. Subscriptions and memberships. You know, I'm not entirely sure what it's composed of, but 1835 was spent in 2019.
So Chris,
Yeah.
right now we're looking at the general fund portion of it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
This
thank
is
you.
the- So I just want to maybe look in and see if we can tell. Yeah, so it looks like Rick uses credit card for some of it, but there's IAEM. Anybody know what that is?
That International Association of Emergency Managers, is that what that is, Jen?
Yeah.
That's a good guess.
Hey, I went to acronym class.
And then National Emergency Management Association, so there's a different one that's similar, I guess, there. We'd have to dig into the credit card invoices to figure out what the rest is.
Right.
But I suppose, you know, whoever replaces this person in the long run is going to need to do research on all this stuff, and take over whatever kind of benefit comes from
I've got
this
Dan
thing.
deep in it right now.
What's that?
I've got Jan in it, it's up to her eyeballs right now.
All right. Yeah, well, okay.
Because with Rick's medical conditions and stuff, which we're not going to talk about in a public meeting, but we're trying to get everything caught back up.
Yeah. Let me look at, anyway, it went up quite a bit in 2019 for some reason, but it's on track in 2020 to be more similar to 2018 and before. So I don't know. I mean,
I'd say, hey Chris, let's hold everything at the 2018 level, and then we can get Jen kind of up to speed and going, and then she can make the determinations from there.
All right. Well, that would be more like 1,000 then.
That's fine. You know, because like I say, some of these memberships we won't carry next year until we figure out what we need and what we don't need. And I'd rather have be more comprehensive and be able to give you exacts.
All right. So I don't know. Or is Renee still on this call or this meeting?
Yeah, I am, Chris.
Are you doing all of the employment advertising out of your budget?
Yep.
So I don't think then, even if we advertise for this position, I don't think we'll need to spend it out of the public notices here. I don't think that there's ever been a need.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a public notice out of EM. I think we just kept it just in case.
Yeah, and then travel, again, we're kind of, you know, way low in 2020 versus.
Right. If we get going, there will be a lot of travel this next year, especially if for Jen to kind of go to some of these meetings and grant meetings and those kind of things. There'll be a lot of travel obligations.
It's still pretty, you know, like the most I think that's been spent was like 2015 at 5,400, and then 2019 was 5,200.
Yeah, I'd keep it. I'd set it at 5. I think that should be.
All right, office supplies also looks kind of inflated to me. In 2018, it was 1,000. 2019 was 1,147. So I guess, you know, the question
Yeah,
is,
I'd set it at 1,500.
all right. And equipment maintenance, already over budget. 13,000 spent, 10,000 budget for 2020. So obviously this one's gonna have to go up
Right.
for 2020. Let me look at the progression here. I don't know, something happened between 2016 and 2017 when that jumped way up. There must have been some kind of,
I think it's been the purchase of radio equipment if I was betting. But without seeing it, I couldn't guarantee that.
well, I mean, hypothetically, I would think that would come out of the 911 fund thing, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't think all of it did though, because I don't think all of it could have been purchased out of that.
All right. Well, this is, yeah, I mean, this is another one of those complicated positions. It's difficult to budget when
Right.
we don't have a lot of experience because there's a lot of grants.
Right.
But we were looking at 12.8 for 2017, 12.4 for 2018. So, I mean, this is an instance, 10.9. I mean, I would at least probably say to bump that up to 11. It doesn't seem like 10's going to even cover it. Because for 3 years running, it's been more than 10.
Right.
I'd
set it at 11 because I think our expenditures will be down probably next year some.
Yeah. And then this year, I don't know, I guess I'll just make mention there of the, I don't know what else might get coded to that, but needs to come up.
Yeah.
Again, same thing with the utilities here where, the budget, it doesn't look sufficient. 26, almost 27,000 in 2018, 21. I'm not sure what accounts for the variance. Is this utilities on?
I need to go back and that one.
Say that again?
I want to go back and pull that account and look at it.
Yeah. Frontier,
Okay.
Emory, AT&T, Rocky Mountain Power. Looks like all of the GWSSA, everything.
Yep.
All right, that's a lot. Every kind of utility under the sun, looks like. But, you know, I'd say that I'd go at least 22 because it's
Yeah.
just to make sure you're covering it because it's probably been over budget every year if we've had it at 20.
Right.
And then this communications tower, that one seems pretty far off also. 7,400 in 2016, 11,000 in 2017, 9,300 in 2018, 3,866 in 2019. Never spent 17,000.
Well, the reason it went to 17 is we thought we were going to have to pay for half of that grounding project on Willow, and we ended up not. The state ended up covering the whole project. That's why on that.
So what if we drop it down to 10? I mean,
Yeah, easy.
yeah. It seems like there must be some other things getting lumped in there then. Maybe
Yeah, I
some
need to
kind
look
of
out.
upgrades or something.
Dan, have you taken notes on this, and will you pull those?
Yep, will do.
and fuel close to 3,000 in 2018, then dropped down to like 1,900 in 2019.
I'd drop that down to 2 because the fuel won't be as high this year, so drop it to 2 for next.
Professional and technical. Anybody know who's been hired in that line item? Rural community consultants. It looks like a Kroger's in there for City Market, which probably shouldn't be in professional. Miscoded. Anyway, that's more research to figure out, you know.
Yeah, we got a lot of homework to do on this one.
Let's see what we can. Maybe I'll look at 2019. That's one idea of what is being spent out of that. Identisys, does that ring a bell? Rural community consultants. It's probably communications consultants or something, I don't know. But
I'd have to look at that Identisys. That's not fingerprint stuff, is it, Shan? I don't know why that'd be coded there. I'm gonna have to look at that one. I'm not sure what that is.
No, it's not fingerprint. The fingerprint stuff that we've had and we still are using currently is Malto. I don't know, they sell their company every year, but the company that we're looking at in my budget is IDEMIA. But we'll get to that.
All right, I'll run a detailed ledger and send it on this. I mean, I know there's some.
Sorry, that rural community consultants is for a wildfire preparedness plan. Looks like we paid that.
Oh, okay.
Well, what do you want to do on a budget for that? It's up kind of all over the place. And it seems to kind of depend on what's going on also, because, you know, we're done with the wild protection plan.
I just leave it at 6,000 and we'll call it good until we'll go as low as we can so we can get our feet underneath us, and then if we need to make the adjustments next year, we'll make them there. I just want the baselines to get us back set.
All right. I'm not familiar with this HMEP grant.
That's hazmat.
The expense side of it.
Yeah, am I right, Jen? HMEP?
Yep. Yep, it's hazmat.
And that one's pretty variable too in expense. So what kind of expenses are those?
I'm not sure what he's coded under there. That's another one. Like I said, this whole thing I'm gonna have to look at, Chris.
Yeah.
Dig into it a little deeper.
Yeah, we don't have much more time before I have to submit. We got one more week before I have to button this down.
Right. I'd set it, like I say, let's go set a baseline, and if I'll make it work.
Well, there's another line in here too that says hazmat also.
But that grant shouldn't cost us anything. That should be shown on our revenue side, because that'll all be paid through the grant.
Well, it depends on whether it's expense reimbursed or what. I mean, if it's expense reimbursed, then there will be an expense.
Jan, have you dealt with that one at all?
Not yet, but it's coming up.
Okay. Can you get on with Angela and let's get that one sorted out?
Yep.
Thank you.
And then, let's see. Miscellaneous services. Yeah, a lot of question marks on this budget.
Yeah.
I mean, it did kind of bump up to close to 2,200 once, but generally it's less than 1,000.
I'd take it to 1,000 and leave it there, Chris.
Clothing, 960, then the hazmat, again, kind of do some research. And then, let's see, inventory, I mean, this would be another one where, again, it's nice to have a list of exactly what you're trying to buy.
Yep, I will produce that, I will find that. We'll have Jen call Rick and get on it. Zero it out until I produce it.
Okay. Schooling, we're probably going to want, I mean, 4,000 is a lot more than has been spent, but if we're going to get a new person, then.
Yeah, I would take it to 2. And then, because a lot of that stuff's going to be reimbursed or paid by the state, so.
Well, we still have
I would
to,
take it
even
to 2, we should be fine.
if we get the money back, we still have to budget to spend it in the first place.
Yeah.
CERT. Anyone know what that is?
That's the Community Emergency Response Team, and it's all but died, so. Jan, is there still a grant associated with any funding for that?
Well, it looks like we actually got a reimbursement, because right now we have some, like, revenue that went into there.
Right.
Let me look at that real quick. Yeah, refund on training. So you're saying that's defunct or what? Not happening?
Yeah, there hasn't been much going on with CERT for quite a while.
So should we zero that?
They lost the instructors and everything for it, and it just didn't have much interest.
Right.
But before you zero that, some of that we have to maintain for other grants, so let me make sure it doesn't have to be maintained for another grant.
All right. So then we have also in here a new line item for just this year only, really, this COVID-19 account. This is where we've been instructing most of the COVID-related expenditures. And so, yeah, anyway, that explains that one. Relatable to emergency management, but this is going to be a tough one also without anybody with experience on it, but the other side of this is the Fund 17, which is where the 911 tax or whatever on your phone bill goes. And I haven't really projected this yet, but I will. So there is, I think, a PTIF account for it, plus there's this surcharge. And then Rick plugged in some grant, $137,480 for grant revenue. And so if somebody could research and try to figure out what that is.
Jen, do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
Okay. We're going to be on the phone with Rick.
Yeah, I mean, he did have a grant that had a balance, mostly was going to be used for upgrades to radio communication towers.
Right. I wonder if that's SHSP, because every bit of that's been donated or dedicated back to the microwave and radio upgrade. So I'm assuming that's probably what that is, but we'll double check.
Yeah. And this is where the other component of the salaries is. 60% of the benefits, et cetera, are over here. And so, something happened with this phone line expense. Budget's 500 and we're up to 9428.
Would that be the new 911 lines in, OJ?
It shouldn't be, not this soon.
Okay.
Every telecom. I wonder if that's getting coded or what the deal is with that. That's significantly more than budget and also more than anything's ever been spent out of there.
Do you know anything about that one, Jen?
Emory did supply 2 of our lines. I believe that those have gone away with the new system.
Okay.
So
That's just recent, though.
The last, we paid in October on it. So it hasn't, if it went away, it just barely went away, because we're paying $13.91. We paid $13.91 this month on it.
Okay.
So that's something to investigate.
Okay. We're going to turn Jen into an investigator.
Yeah, I'm just going to, until we verify that that's supposed to be getting coded to that account, I'm just going to keep the budget at 500 then.
Okay.
And then there's another phone bill. And this one appears to be tracking with 2019. 2019 closed out at about 40,000, and we're year-to-date 36. So I'm thinking that 2021 is going to have to be in the 40, 41 neighborhood also.
Yeah.
And I think, some dispatch expenses come out of here, right? Is this probably dispatch expense?
Yeah.
Equipment maintenance is over budget by quite a bit also. Try to figure out what's up with that.
Okay.
But 900 normally looks like it would cover. For some reason, it's way up there. Then we got the lease on the. Is it a lease or was the bond payment on that? Whatever it was, the thing that we have the loan from that bank. We have a bond on some kind of dispatch equipment that we pay.
Right, but it shouldn't be that much money. Maybe it is. I'm going to have, Jen, you're going to have to go through all of these because I'm not sure on them.
Yeah, that's it.
I just as soon have you go through them so we know exactly what's what.
So that is the thing that we're financed on with the bond from the Kansas Bank.
Okay.
What is that thing again? What did he buy?
Is that a recorder?
It might be the recorder.
'Cause I think that was the only thing we had leased was the recorder, I thought.
Well, it's not a lease, it's a loan. It's an actual, loan that he got.
Okay.
For some reason, it was higher in 2019, but 10,668 appears to be the loan amount.
Okay.
And then here's that other miscellaneous grant expense. So we're whatever that grant is, we're budgeting for the money to come in and go out.
Okay. That's another check.
Miscellaneous supplies, 10,000 is already over budget this year. Went to 11. 2019, and 12,421 in 2018.
I'd take it to 11, because we're not gonna be spending anything more on that this year, just in case something else comes through, but we're not gonna spend any more.
All right, I don't know, anybody have any ideas on what capital purchases? Nothing's been spent, but we've got 15,000 budgeted for equipment, and then there's a lease purchase. I don't know what the deal is with that. 3,600.
I think was that for his pickup?
I don't know. Nothing's been spent in that line, so it's a budget without a history.
I'm gonna have Jennifer go through every one of these accounts, so we'll have you an answer.
All right.
Hey, Chris, can I jump back in here for just 1 second?
Yeah.
At Emory Telecom, the first payment is in June for $3,800, and that was the installation of the new 911 system. So the Frontier bill should be going away. The Emory one is the one that will stay. So that $1,391 will be ongoing. That's the new 911 system.
So has that been charged somewhere else in the past? How come it all of a sudden showed up like that?
That's a good question. I don't know, but yeah, I talked to Matt, and that's what that is. So,
but I guess I'm wondering, like, where was that expense before?
no, you're right. That's a good question.
So let's try to figure that out.
Before it was
because
from
obviously-
Frontier, you're right. It should have been in the same account, but before it was from Frontier, we switched that to Emory now, and so now that it's Emory, it's
Yeah,
still-
but somehow when we made the switch, the account it was being charged to got switched also.
yes, you're right.
So we got to figure out, maybe you could try to figure out, Quinn, where that prior Frontier bill is being charged.
Okay, we'll do.
Yeah, I don't know. And then there's also a training budget here. Do you think you need the training? I mean, I suppose this could be training for dispatch also, besides emergency management.
Right. So like I say with those, I'm gonna have her pull all of them and look.
All right. So yeah, I mean, like I say, I've got one more week before I need to produce a tentative budget.
You get this, Jen?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm gonna make a note also to send you, Jen, like a detailed ledger and some other information that could help try to figure out what these things are. But yeah, you might have to touch base with Rick on the grants that are open and active. And I'll try to dig up some emails too that he sent me and forward those on.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but
I've got a lot of questions.
does anybody have any questions that can be answered right now? Before we move on to the jail. All right.
Chris, before we move on to jail, I think I can see where to fix SAR salaries so they hop down. Do you want me to hop in and do that really quick?
Sure, yeah, if you can figure it out.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to the jail budget. Also in the general fund, going back to the general fund now. So, first question, also Shan, same, you know, it's what are we going to do about overtime for 2020 and 2021? 2020 is looking really good so far, only about 29,000 versus 2019, which is 102,000. Or
Right.
yeah.
So But 2019, the reason why 2019 is because dispatch was so short, and that's why that overtime budget was so high. Dispatch is currently filled, so that's why it's gone back down significantly. And then I've been trying to cut as much overtime as I can because this year sucks. So, but I can't make an actual assessment on so much because this year's been out of whack. So, in the past, we've kind of fluctuated, it looks like, between the 80 to the, and then the 50, 56, but I can't count 17 because we are in Emery County. And that's the problem, is my staff fluctuates so damn much. So I would be comfortable leaving it around that 75, 76 range for this next year because I'm trying to get more staff. I've only got currently 4 deputies, including me, not including me, so 5 including me. So the potential of overtime is going to go up, especially with COVID. I'm currently knocked out because of it. So overtime is going to go up. So I would like to keep it around that range for this next one.
All right, well, 75. And we've got those 2 positions also that you'll be able to hire in January.
Right, so that would give me 5 positions that I would need to fill, and then I'm requesting another sergeant position.
You are you?
Yeah.
Hey, and one other thing also on that, Chris, I'm looking to reclassify Shan from a lieutenant to a captain, which would be a 1-step grade increase for him. Not a step grade.
I didn't even know we had that. Captain Shan.
No, instead of I have to figure out the whole force.
Sounds like I'd be flying an airplane or something.
God save us if you were.
Chris. But anyways, no, the sergeant position. So realistically,
I can never remember how to spell sergeant. How do you spell sergeant?
SER. It's SER.
SAR period.
SGT period, actually. Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds better.
And Chris, that one is included in the salaries as a proposed position. So it's in that total already for 2021.
Oh, you already got that one in?
Yep.
Right. So the idea behind the sergeant position is I've explained this to you before, Chris, is more or less right now my staff is constantly, even if I was full staff, they would be working by themselves. The idea for those 2 positions that were approved last year is that way I would have 2 on at all times, which is safe. I mean, it's not an unrealistic request when you're operating a jail. The second sergeant is that way I could split the crews, and then there would be that floater in between if somebody got sick. That would hopefully alleviate on overtime in the long run because that sergeant position would fill in for that sick individual. That way they're never having to operate the jail by themselves.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
That's what I get.
We gotta figure out what the bottom line is. To understand what we can afford in terms of new positions. I don't know yet. What do you every once in a while there's this charge in liquor law enforcement.
I have no idea, Chris. That's always locked for me to enter. I can't even view it. So.
I mean, it would hypothetically be some kind of hours charged to it, but I don't know. Must be some miscoding going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Chris.
And then on call, you got a ton of on call this year.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, so what's going on with that is I'm on call 24/7. And as per my job description, I'm on call 24/7. And the crew's been busy, so I started putting on call on my time card.
You
That's
better
why.
stop doing that.
I know, right? So I don't know. I'm always getting called out, or I'm always on call. I decided I felt like getting paid for it for a change. So I don't know. That's going to be the realistic number if I put on call on my time card every year. I don't put it down when I'm sick. I don't put it down when I'm vacation, but that never happens. So I always get on call.
Well, I mean, is your position exempt?
No.
It's not? All right. So you would get overtime if you worked it?
Yes. I get overtime, vacation, sick, and on call and call out. But as per my job description, I'm required to be on call 24/7.
Yeah, well, me too.
Congratulations, you should put on call.
All right, well, is that in line with policy, Renee and Steve? I mean, it seems like, I don't know how public policy works.
Yeah, it's written into their job descriptions.
It's written into our policy too. Let me find the spot.
But how come, the public safety department heads aren't exempt and every other department head is?
I will pull it up. 1 second.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that a lot of department heads are dealing with, but, virtually none of them get, they're exempt, and so they don't get that kind of stuff.
Well, that's one of those things that maybe we need to look at, but we've always kept them with the on-call because of the 24/7 call-out. That's just the way it's always been. I know that's a poor answer, but that's the only one that I have.
So for the on-call duty in the policy, it says non-exempt employees of departments may be designated to be on call for after-hours emergencies. These employees will be on call as scheduled by their supervisor. During the times the employees are on call, they will be required to be available by cell phone and remain within 30-minute response time to their departments. Sheriff's office employees can be scheduled for on-call and must be available to respond immediately when called out to duty. On-call employees receive the 1 hour of straight time for each day they are on call.
Well, again, I get that. My question is, why is this position non-exempt?
And that would be my question as well.
The chief deputy for the sheriff's department is also non-exempt. Maybe because they're under the elected.
And because I think when this came up years ago it was because they were still subject to the call out, and at that time it was determined that they couldn't be. There was no reason for them to be exempt because they were subject to call out, if I remember right.
Well,
it's probably something we need to relook at.
Department heads are always subject to call out. It's like if somebody,
Right.
I was here working until 9 at night last night.
Right.
And it's the same with a lot of others. All the other department heads in the whole county don't get on-call pay, but they're on call.
Yeah. Well, it's probably something we need to relook at. Like I said, it's been that way as long as I remember. The last time it was revisited, that it was where they were still deemed they were eligible for overtime because of the call out, that's why it was left the way that it was. But that was just before I became sheriff, I think.
Yeah.
I think that was the last time it was looked at.
Well, it doesn't jive with the department heads, that's all I can say. I'd love to be able to charge 24 hours of on-call or whatever also, and probably sure all the other department heads would like to also, but that's not how it works.
Right.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, Evan, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
This is Chris Kaufman. Just in the employee handbook, under Section C, positions excluded from FLSA coverage, chief deputies are specifically included under the second bullet point.
As being exempt?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would include Daryl, but not necessarily Shan.
Sure. I just pulled it up on the. Sorry, Chris. I just pulled it up on the DLL website. So it is considered a first responder position, which we cannot move them to an exempt position.
All right.
Firefighters, police officers, and other first responders have to be eligible for overtime.
Okay, well then that explains it.
Yep.
I'm just trying to figure out what the deal is. All right, well, I'll need a recalculation then on call, because 2,500 is not going to cover it. So Renee, maybe you could recalculate that for me. All right. So I think we got all of the hiring freeze positions in there that are vacant, plus this new proposed sergeant. So we'll have to remember to bring this up, add this all in. Last year I wasn't plugging in proposed positions until I kind of calculated what their cost would be, but I wasn't plugging them in. But it might actually be easier. I can always go in and establish the change in the cost of a proposed position just by zeroing the hours out and saving it. But anyway, that sergeant request will have to be evaluated by the commissioners. All right, so moving on. Travel, 5,000 looks generally okay relative to other years besides 2020. And obviously when we were transporting to Green River. So that's probably good. Office expenses looks good relative to 2019.
I'm hoping that number will go down eventually, like Steve's brought up, is the paperless side. I am really trying to push for that, but I have to leave it until I get all that done. So.
All right, so what's up with the equipment and maintenance?
So last year, the 2020 budget, the reason why it was 10,000 is because I have to purchase locks for my doors and stuff. So I put it in the equipment maintenance is when the lock breaks. I have to purchase new ones. And this is for the cell doors. They're anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a pop. So I planned on purchasing 6 or 7 of them this year. And then that way I would have an inventory. So that way I didn't have to budget for it every year. The reason why it's 10,000 again is I talked to you about this. So CML, the company that did the doors and the locks and all that equipment and dispatch, the operating system for the control room essentially to open doors and everything. The warranty was up. And so I received a proposal, more or less, saying that for $7,000 a year, we'll give you 32 man hours and basically come in and check the locks and do all this other stuff. I meant to attach it, and I apologize. I forgot to attach the proposal. But anyways, and it gave you discount costs on anything that was, any hours that was over the 32, and then equipment, it gave you a 10% discount off of like supplies or whatever, 10% off of MSRP if you went into this agreement with them. But it was $7,000 a year, and I thought we were getting it in the shorts because that's ridiculous for 32 man hours. I tried to talk to them. They went back to their bosses. They dropped it down to 6,000 for the year, and then added the 24-hour IT assistance to get into their computer and remote access, but we would have to pay an hourly rate on that. So it's not a very good deal, more or less. I put it on there so we could discuss it and go over, because the only other option is I put money in there and then we have to pay them an hourly rate to come down if we have any problems, and the hourly rate that's on the proposal will go up. And it's around $130 an hour. So, and then it's a markup on any like locks or any other parts that we would need. So like I said, I put it at 10,000 because it would be $6,000 for the year for their services if we went into that agreement. And then I put the 4,000 on top of it, for any parts or anything like that that would come up, because unfortunately the locks that are in the system, all it takes is more or less, I mean, somebody to beat on it for a little while and they bend, and then I have to replace the whole lock. And that's what we ran into in 2019 and 2018. But that's where I'm at. So, I mean, if you guys want to talk about it, I mean, I'm all for it. Otherwise, I'd drop it down if we don't want to do that agreement.
So, prior to now, all that was covered under warranty, right?
Yes.
How much are the locks each?
Like I said, they're anywhere, if I remember correctly, I would have to pull up an old invoice. I haven't purchased them since 2019. But they were around, I'm pretty sure they were between $1,500 to $2,000 a piece.
All right, so the alternative is I guess, to risk. So you've discussed with Matt. He doesn't,
go ahead.
He's capable of maintaining like the IT support side?
So I talked to Matt about it. The issue is when we got the system, the intent was to have CML basically do the services on those locks. And Matt and I believe we had budgeted for our own maintenance position for the jail at one point in time. That didn't happen. So Matt was never trained on their IT system or on their computer system. So, I mean, talking to him, he doesn't even know how to access their computer to even shut it down. So he would have to do quite a bit of training on it. Some of the stuff, when he went through the contract, he said he could potentially do some of this stuff, but a lot of it, the back end stuff, he has no idea. And then on the lock side, I imagine maintenance could muddle their way through it. But a lot of the stuff they do when CMLs come down in the past, when they fix the lock, they do both the computer and the lock at the same time. So they're checking the system because they talk to each other. So, I mean, basic lube and oil maintenance could do, but when it comes down to the technical stuff, I don't know.
Well, I don't know either.
So I'm fine with not doing the deal. Like I said, I think it's kind of ridiculous. $6,000 for 32 man hours is really ridiculous. But I would have to try and come up with a number. And if we drop that down to say 4,000 or 5,000 for the year, and hopefully, I mean, but I don't know if I'll spend it or I don't know if I'll go over. That's the problem.
Well, the question is, like, I guess, where, I'm assuming they have to travel here. And when they charge us for their hours, are they charging on-site hours or including travel or what?
They start charging the hours when they leave the closest site or whatever. So, and I believe the closest site is Bloomfield, Colorado. So that's about a 5-hour drive, I think.
So they're gonna charge us $130 an hour to drive.
Correct.
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous.
Right.
But if we have a problem, we'll pay even more than that if we don't sign
Correct.
it.
So yeah, that 32 man hours is basically once a year they come down and they check do an overhaul of the system. And then anything after that is at a discounted rate.
So 32 hours sounds like maybe like one trip.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Once a year they basically come down and do an overhaul of the system and do all the updates and all that other stuff and fix any errors that are going on at that time. And then anything after that is going to be charged at an hourly rate, but at a discounted rate.
Oh man, I don't know.
So, and that's why I left it at the 10,000 so we could discuss. But like I said, that's the only reason why that's that high for next year. This year's was 10,000 so I could purchase locks. The only reason why I haven't really spent too much on it this year is because I didn't know where we were going with the COVID and weather. So I kind of held off until the end so I could make the purchases. I didn't want to spend it just in case the economy shut down again.
Okay. Well, does anybody have any opinion on this quandary here? I don't know. I mean, it's obviously security related, and if we have a problem, we can't just leave it broken.
Correct. I mean, and I can drop it down from 10,000. I can make it, I mean, if it's $6,000 for the agreement, I mean, and we could make it 8,000 for, because if I purchase 6 locks this year, and then if I just have the 2,000 remaining, if I need to purchase one other lock or something else that went down, so I can drop.
Yeah, but if the lock is broken, can you guys replace it, or do you have to pay? Because
no, we can replace the lock, but the issue is on the computer side, we need to make sure that it's still talking, because in the past, when we've replaced the lock, when it was still under warranty, we'll put the lock in, but for some reason on the computer side, it would still show open when it was closed and vice versa. So, but the lock was functioning. It was just the computer end wasn't reading it right.
Well, I'm just wondering if you have to, if they have to fix the computer, is it going to cost $6,000 because they have to drive all the way here, or do they do that remotely somehow?
They could do it remotely. I believe they could do it remotely. I'm not 100% sure. So, like I said, I'm not 100% sure on all this. So that's
right,
why I put it on there, is because so we can discuss.
We go leave it at 10. You buy the locks, and then we'll go 8. I mean, I don't know. And then, is it just 1 year at a time or multiple years you have to sign the agreement?
I believe it's just 1 year at a time. So I think you have to renew this every year.
All right. So maybe then I guess what I'm proposing is to see what our utility is of the agreement.
Right.
Try it for 1 year and then try to assess, what value we got out of it.
Okay.
Because when you're dealing with these like proprietary systems, you're kind of just stuck, I think, with whatever, because there aren't probably a lot of options besides going with the company that provides the program and the locks, right?
Right. So it's through CML. So if we didn't, yeah, I mean, we would have to go through a new company. I think CML is, I mean, all their software is theirs. So.
All right. Okay. Let's move on from that then. Professional and technical.
Professional and technical, it went down a little bit from last year, but what's in that is basically the policy agreement. And it's still attached. If you open up attachments, it shows that 9,000 and something that we have for the policy agreement. And then I have Dakota, which is a training program, but it's an agreement through basically the same company that's doing our policy. We've had that going for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So that's just an annual fee that we pay. And then
As far as the policy, I mean, what have we got out of it this year? I mean, what's been produced?
Oh, so a lot. I've been reviewing, and so they send me new policies every 2 weeks. And then I go through and review, and then it gets submitted for the final approval, and then it goes back to them. They're currently getting the system and our usernames and everything done, and then they got to come down and schedule a training, or we're going to do it over Zoom or something. So we can start logging in and utilizing the policy that's been finished and approved. So there's quite a bit that's been done. I've been working on it since, I don't know, I started getting policy in February.
All right, and then I guess, you know, at some point, I think you may have said that it hypothetically can decrease our liability insurance rates, or?
So we looked into that. I never got a clear answer from, because I talked to Jana about it that year. And I know because on LexiPol, I believe we get a discounted insurance rates. And we were looking into it on this end, but I never heard an answer for sure, if I remember correctly, from Jana.
All right, maybe if you can follow up on that after the election's over.
Yeah.
I can run it past Doug too at the trust. Shan, remind me of the name of that program.
Oh, it's, gosh dang it. The hell is it, Steve?
It's
NIJO.
Okay.
It's through NIJO or the ARM system, but I'll send you an email, Renee.
All right, thanks.
Okay, yeah, I'd just like to make sure that if, you know, there is some discount we can get, that we communicate it and try to get it.
Right.
So, no more cell phones for anybody? You guys are going,
Well, I think the cell phone was, I think it was moved over to Steve's. That's why we didn't budget for it. I have no idea. It wasn't put in the 2020 budget. So.
Yeah, you guys shouldn't have you shouldn't have your cell phones this year either.
Right. So I don't know why it's being billed to that account when we don't even have a budget for it. So.
Maybe that was just an error.
Right.
I can correct that if we want to move it over to on the sheriff's side, but.
Well, I don't remember moving it to the sheriff's.
Neither do I, but.
Because the sheriff's is just enough to cover his own.
Right.
So we must have made a mistake, or I did maybe. I guess let's see, so it kind of varies, I suppose, because we need employees in and out, but I guess I'll put 6290 now, but can you, Renee, try to calculate what we should be budgeting for the cell phone allowance in the jail?
Yes.
then miscellaneous supplies, similar to 2018, 2019.
Yeah, I dropped it down in the 10,000 I put buying clothing and stuff. The issue's been is I don't have anywhere to store anything. When we remodeled the jail, I lost all the storage. So I've been trying to do run estimates and averages the best I can every year on clothing that we go through. Our numbers dropped this year, obviously, so I didn't go through a lot of clothing, but I'm going to purchase what I can this year and then leave it low for next year. And then whatever storage, I guess I'll try and fit what I can in that Connex unit that I have out at the EOC. So that's why I dropped it down. I'm not purchasing as many clothes or mattresses and stuff like that. So,
Well, I mean, compared to your actual.
right, it's pretty close. So yeah.
All right, and then paper. Looks like John. Well, let's have a look at the.
So I combined those two, the kitchen and the jail papers, if you remember correctly from last year. So I put it at 7,500 because this year it looks like we're going to be close to 7,000 by the time the end of the year is done. So I put it at 7,500 because everything, chemicals and cleaning supplies and everything's going up because of COVID, and we've increased cleaning regiments at the jail. So I put it up to 7,500.
All right, so yeah, these are moving up and combining these duplicative
Right.
accounts.
It's because in the past it seemed like one account would be billed and one account wouldn't. So I just figured it'd be easier just to combine the two.
So jail chemicals, is that like cleaning supplies or what?
Yes. Yeah, that's all the cleaning supplies for the jail and the kitchen.
Seems to vary quite a bit.
Right.
19, you spent 5,500.
Right. And this year we're at 4,400.
Yeah.
And I budgeted for 7, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can drop it down. I just don't know what the prices of chemicals are going to be at next year. Everything's going up in cleaning supplies. So, I mean, I'm fine with dropping it down back to the 6,500. Then we can just see where we're at. And, I mean, if I have to go, I mean, if we end up going over, we'll deal with it then. But.
All right. So
And
then jail food.
The infamous food budget.
Well, you did hit 90.
Right.
Last
In 2019. Right. So our numbers went up dramatically. I don't know why. I think it was a change in the judge, a change in laws when they're not sending people to prison as much anymore. But our numbers went up dramatically in 2018 and 2019 for inmates. So the food budget went up. So this year I can't really count because our numbers went down because we've been citing and releasing a lot of people, and the courts have been releasing on their own recognizance quite a bit because of COVID, because they were ordered by the Utah Supreme Court to do so. So our numbers have gone down dramatically when it comes to inmate population. So I can't really base that 56,000 because the year prior I was at 90, and the year prior to that I was at 75, and so I left it at 85 this year because because my numbers could go back up next year.
All right. Well, it seems all right to me then, but pretty variable and hard to predict.
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if COVID still plays a pretty big role in next year also.
Well, and I'm sure it will, but I can't make that assessment until next year because the courts are changing the way they do things. They've got new bail releases, new programs that they're doing, but I can't make that prediction for, until I see what this next year is going to bring.
Yeah. Okay. Then there's all the clothing allowances for your deputies, and then,
So and one question on that clothing allowances. So for some reason, like Landon Levitt, he wasn't budgeted on my clothing allowance, was he? For 2020, but he's being billed in the 2020 actuals. So Landon Levitt, there's a couple of these guys that are road deputies that are no longer in the jail. They're not listed on Steve's budget because when I was helping Steve with his budget, I went to go enter them in there, but they're not listed on his. So I went back into mine and budgeted for them on mine. So we need to do some changes in the system so that way they reflect accurately who's a road deputy and where they should be coming out of his budget versus mine.
yeah, I mean, I've always kind of disagreed. This is like carryover from the way past clerk has done it, and I think it's silly to create these accounts for each employee.
Right.
I think that it should just be one account that has a clothing allowance for all the employees you got.
Right.
And then either Amy or Eve or somebody just tracks the balance for each employee. And the budget just has one line item for it.
No, I agree 100%. Like you said, I think
Look
the reason why they're
look
doing
at all
it
these
is
accounts that have been created that can never go away.
right. No,
And so
I agree.
this is going to keep going and going and going. And so, and I don't know if you guys want to do it this year or whatever, but I mean, it should be up to you guys administratively to track your own balance for each individual employee and just not to blow past the total budget that we set that's
Right,
based on.
that's what's happening now. Eve's tracking everybody's now.
Right. So
Yeah.
we're already doing it, Chris. I mean, I'm fine with it if Steve's fine with it.
Yeah, I'd rather see it that way.
Because it gets confusing and we're getting mixed up on who's budgeting who, and because you're right, there's so many damn accounts, it's ridiculous.
And when Eve
Well-
gives payroll numbers at the end of the year for the budget or for the next year, I rarely look at what's in the budgeted account. I pull up all the invoices and see what was actually charged. So if we want to do away with accounts, I'm fine with that too.
Right, because half of these accounts listed on here are not even active employees anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, that's the problem with, it's like once an account gets charged, you can't get rid of it. You have to stay there forever.
Right.
And so it makes your budget really messy and confusing and hard to work with. And so, I would say that it's, it should just be up to you guys to track each employee's balance. And I don't think that I, as a budget officer, should be doing that, trying to do that anyway by dealing with all these bazillions of accounts. And so,
I agree.
So Renee, Shan, Steve, let's just try to figure out what the total is for each, for the jail and the sheriff. Move that all into just one account. Because eventually, if we go long enough, we can do like we can hide, like if I were to right click on this and I think in columns I can do hide zero, or rows, hide zero records. It will get rid of any accounts that have all zeros.
Okay.
And that's, so some of these would disappear and all of them would disappear eventually.
Sure.
But yeah, let's just do that instead, and then it will be on the sheriff and the jail's administrative staff to just kind of track everyone's balance, or whoever.
And so, and on one of these, Chris, so if you look on Whitehead's clothing allowance, it shows $156. Whitehead hasn't worked for us since 2013. So, I mean, we really need to go through these accounts and figure out what's going on. Because I think things are, and that's the problem with having so many accounts, things are getting billed to the wrong areas.
Yeah.
Or it's one that didn't get renamed at some point, like we reused it for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I have been reusing some of them.
Okay,
Usually go in and rename them too.
sure.
So I'm sure it's probably a clothing expense. It's just,
Miscoded.
confusing to figure out. I mean, trying to keep all this straight is pretty hard.
Right.
A lot easier to make a little Excel spreadsheet with everybody on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then just keep up with that rather than trying to like reconcile all of this mess.
Right.
Right, but we already have an Excel on everybody, so.
All right, so yeah, let's just stop doing this then. Okay, so then miscellaneous services. I don't know what you charged that.
I don't know either. It's just been on there. I think it's been 2,000. I think I went through and ran averages on what we budgeted for, not actuals. I mean, oh, okay. So that's what they've been doing. So that's for our shirts and stuff. So Lynn's Embroidery, they sew on all the patches and whatnot. This year we obviously haven't been doing that much. So, but that's why that's there. So we could lower that one down to, I would say, probably $1,000, Chris.
All right, inventory. Is this where your fingerprint?
Yeah, so I attached the IDEMIA proposal. So what's going on with our fingerprint machine is it's going out. And it's all automated system. We don't ink roll fingerprints anymore unless our system breaks, which it has been. BCI, they will accept ink on worst case scenarios, but they don't like to do it anymore because they've gone away from it. But it's getting to the point where our system is shutting down. And like I mentioned earlier, Gemalto was the company that we went with. They have to remote. It seems like it's every other, month that we're constantly calling them. They have to fix the machine. We have to reboot everything. They're not doing the updates like they're supposed to. The system's just not working. It's not submitting prints, so I have to go back through and update the system. So BCI is not getting the criminal history records that they need to. So it's been a constant hassle for the past 2 years. Matt has been working a lot on the system, but there's only so much Matt can do with it. And they keep selling, so it's hard to keep track of who to call and for IT services. So we talked about it. I contacted BCI on what systems would be compatible. This IDEMIA company, BCI uses their systems, so they'll obviously be able to talk. They say they're very good systems. And they're under state contract. So there you go. I don't know why it's not opening up, but.
You guys can't see it.
No.
I can see it.
Yeah. So I think on that contract, I highlighted the area. So on the laptop side, the reason why that's on there is because Steve would have to enter that into his inventory budget, because that's for the sheriff's office side. And that's for their, when people come in for their fingerprint for the prints that need to be sent to BCI for like concealed permits, new employees and stuff like that. Because you can't use our 10 print system because it's for criminal side. So, and they have a laptop over there, but it needs to be updated to Windows 10 because eventually it just won't talk, as far as if I remember correctly from what Matt was saying. So we were going to just purchase them this year, the new laptop and then the new system, and they would have all the new Windows 10 updates as well. Because ultimately we're going to have to if we kept the old system that's constantly going down, we would have to pay a lot of money to update it to Windows 10 anyways, because we've looked at that option as well. So we just talked about maybe just going with the new system that has all the updates, and that's a better system. So there's
So is that what you plugged in for the budget?
Sorry, what?
That's what have you got all that plugged in for the inventory budget?
Yeah, so other than the laptop, so everything that was highlighted on that proposal would be coming out of my budget. It came up to like 21,000 and some change, so I just made it 22.
All right.
And I've talked to Matt, and usually we inventory for computers, and I've went through with Matt, and we don't have any computers that need to be purchased this year, so that's why it's just made up at 22. So hopefully that's the only purchase that I need to make out of that budget for this year.
All right. Well, might have to move that over to capital because it's more than 5, obviously, and a piece of equipment.
Okay.
And then you got 8,000 for schooling.
Right. So
2,000 more than.
Huh?
That's 2,000 more than you spent in 2019.
Right, because I've got 4 deputies, and I'm hopefully going to be hiring 5 deputies. Well, hopefully 6, but but anyways, so I'm going to have a lot of training that's going to be going on this year.
All right.
Hopefully.
And then remind me again. Can't remember what this trustee incentive is.
Well, that's the inmate worker account. So when the inmates, like the state inmates or county inmates, do a trustee program, we pay them for their work. So when they're cleaning or working in the kitchen or laundry, that's broke down between, I think, 8 positions for the jail. So we have like 2 cooks, and then 2 sub cooks, and then 2 dishwashers, and then 2 laundry workers, because I have to do male and female. And then we have 1 hall cleaner and then 1 library position.
So have you not done this at all?
What do you mean?
It doesn't look like there's been any expenses charged to it.
Well,
I guess there has been.
So the problem, what we're running into, Chris, is I think it's because in the past, the reason why you would see it is before we had lockdown. So remember when you were the clerk auditor, we were having problems with the lockdown versus Cassell and trying to make sure all the records were talking, and that's still the issue. So they're getting paid, we just need to reconcile the accounts.
Oh, so it's been happening, but it's just not showing up on
It's
our side?
It's showing on lockdown, it's just not showing on the Cassell side.
Well, where is it pulling the money in lockdown? Like, the checks still have to, so, this is a little, because normally, that would all not be, most of the things in lockdown aren't going to touch this department, any account in this department.
Right.
And so is Jana aware of that at all? I guess I'm just wondering, it's got to be getting accounted for somehow, but it's not being accounted for.
Right. And I don't know where you guys were pulling the money out of prior to, whether it was going into an inmate trust account or what it was going into. I'm not sure what you guys were doing prior to lockdown. But the systems, we just need to go through and we need to reconcile these accounts. This was an issue when you were the clerk auditor and we were trying to work on it.
Well, and I think a lot of those are trust and agency type money. This is not that. This would be money that, like, if we're going to pay them, it's not coming out of anything they've given us.
Right.
We're just, right? And,
right.
So it would have to be expensed out of this and not, and so if it's being reconciled somehow out of 71 trust and agency accounts, it's going to throw trust and agency way off.
I don't think
Because
it is,
that-
but we would have to look and see what they've done in the past. Like I said, Chris, I don't know unless we print off a report and then you guys pull the money somehow from this account to put it into another account to make sure that like I said, I'm not sure on how we're going to do it. Like I said, I've been trying to work on this for a while and get everything reconciled, but things happen and COVID happens. And I mean, it's just, there's a lot of accounts that need to be reconciled and fixed. You've known that for a while and I've known that. We've been trying to work on it. So this is just one of them that is.
All right, well, that's something to check up on. I mean, it may be that amount. I don't know, because I don't know how it's being accounted for, but it must be getting accounted for somehow in the trust and agency account, which, in my opinion, would throw the trust and agency account off.
Probably.
That's an expense without a revenue.
Right.
All right, we'll have to check in on that.
Yep.
Yeah, we do need to get going on reconciling lockdown and getting everything squared away, because that's causing major problems too.
Right. And
all right,
yeah.
so
Anyways, that's a different conversation.
That's it for the jail. Anybody have comments, questions for the jail?
I'm full of answers. Ask away. Nobody?
Okay.
Gosh.
So is that the last one we have on, I hope?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other considerations before we close the meeting from anybody? Okay. Well, I'll adjourn the meeting then. It is 12:19, and that is the end of the October 23rd Budget Advisory Board meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Um,